Chapter 882. Everyone, Qianli's drunk strength isn't as simple as you think it is. It took a lot of effort to stop these people from discussing Qianli's drunk. His heart was filled with emotion. From the beginning, he didn't look down on Qianli's drunk, but Qianli's strength had exceeded his expectations. His agility, reflexes, and combat techniques were on a completely different level from the average player. Because of this, the average player had no idea how powerful he was. His strength was beyond the scope of the average player's imagination. "Oh, then what's so strong about him?" someone asked. I can't really describe it. I can only remind everyone to be careful of this person. He has the strength to destroy an entire guild by himself. Forever said. "You're talking about the 1,000 killed during the city war, right?" "Ha, I heard about that. I've looked into it, and there was no 1,000 kill. Didn't Qianli's drunk add his agility points? At that time, he was running away, and that guild chased after him. They were a bit careless, and the team was too spread out, giving him an opportunity to take them down one by one. He didn't kill many people, just the agility classes that ran faster. After that, that guild was no longer spread out, and Qianli's drunk couldn't do anything to them. There's no such thing as 1,000 slaughter." "Ha ha ha." One of the 31 people laughed. "Anyway, everyone, don't be careless." Forever sighed. He knew he didn't need to worry about their carelessness. Matchless Hero didn't expect them to do much by inviting them. He just wanted to use them to pick out more troublesome opponents for very defiant. Matchless Hero wanted them to lose miserably. "Apart from Qianli's drunk, is there anything else we need to be aware of?" someone else asked. Sword Demon, Drunkard, Yutian Shinming, Unscathed in Battle, Drifting, South Sword, Twilight in the Clouds. "I'm sure everyone is familiar with these names, right?" Forever said. "Oh, they are all experts." Someone nodded. "However, an expert is an expert. That was the game of the past. It's a brand new model now, so it's hard to say who's better. Moreover, even if he was an expert, how high could he be? With so many people working together, it's more than enough to deal with a few experts. Anything else?" This time, he agreed with the other party's argument. Although the Sword Demon and the others were masters, they weren't abnormal masters like Qianli drunk. Even if they were stronger, they wouldn't be much stronger. That was, if you had 8 tails, I would have half a caddy. Now that I have 2.5 caddies, it would be 10 tails in total. Against your 8 tails, I would still have an extra 2 tails. Unlike that Qianli, who was drunk, he really didn't know how to measure his strength. Wasn't it a little too exaggerated to use a ton? Always imagining things. There's also the new group of players that Cloudy Summer brought in. They're all from Moonlit Night City's 10 Guilds Alliance. They're very tenacious and crazy when it comes to PvP. Their fighting style might be slightly different from the players you're used to seeing, Eternal said. "Ha, no matter how crazy they are, 200 strength can't become 400. One person replied. Everyone burst into laughter again. As they listened carefully along the way, they gradually felt that it was a bit exaggerated for Ing Chi to gather 31 of them in one go. Perhaps he was hoping that they would have the advantage of numbers and could defeat this heaven-defying person in one fell swoop with the force of a thunderbolt. "Brother always, if there's anything else, just say it all at once." "That's it," Always said. "Is that so? Then, everyone, let's put on a good show for our first time working together." The person who asked the question shouted at the other 30 people. "No problem." Evidently, the other 30 people were very confident. "But it's best if we get to know each other first." The person laughed and suggested. "Ha ha ha." Everyone laughed. "Come, everyone, open up your friends list and add each other as friends." The person said. The scene immediately became lively. It seemed like taking down the extremely overpowered person was not a difficult task for them. Yong Yong glanced at Matchless Hero, who nodded at him, indicating that this was enough. Always did not say anything else. However, he knew in his heart that if he were to sincerely warn these people about his heaven-defying strength, he would definitely say, "Be careful of the drunkard, the guy who is now called the young master of the Han clan." In terms of strength, even with Qianli's drunkard, the extremely overpowered person would still be at an absolute disadvantage. Therefore, it made no difference if he said anything about these experts. Only this sly and cunning person would be the most dangerous person in this situation where the extremely overpowered person could only win with his wits. Always did not say this, and he knew that he did not need to say it. After all, sending these people over meant that they would lose. The 31 of them made a ruckus in the tavern before returning to their homes to make preparations. The teleportation scrolls they used were all paid for by Ying-Qi, but after this, Ying-Qi did not say anything about going to Cloud City, so they would have to deal with it themselves. Most of the main cities were very far away from Cloud City, and it would take several days to walk there. If they used teleportation scrolls, one could only transport 4 people, and 10 of them could only transport 40 people. Although the game company had lifted the restriction on the trading of teleportation scrolls, it was still a considerable investment to rely on teleportation scrolls to fly over. These guys might not necessarily be willing to spend it. "I wonder how they'll get over there," Always said. He had suggested that Matchless Hero give a small gift at the beginning, but he would bear the cost of the teleportation scrolls, but Matchless Hero did not accept it. Hearing this, Matchless Hero brought up the matter again. "Do you know why I didn't agree to your suggestion? Real money is more attractive. With the money, they'll be able to solve the problem of walking by themselves," Always said. This was his opinion. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that we don't have many teleportation scrolls left, and they're still very useful, Matchless Hero said. "Oh. Think about it, and you'll understand." Matchless Hero's smile was extremely sly. Always paused for a moment, and after thinking about it for a while, he suddenly understood. Giving money and promising better rewards had already moved these people. Since they had already agreed, how they would go was their own business, and there was no need to worry about it. The long journey might have restricted them. If they used teleportation scrolls, they wouldn't be willing to spend too much money. If they walked, some people might not be willing to travel such a long distance. As a result, there would be fewer people going, and the lower the number of people going, the higher the chance of failure. Defeat. This was exactly what Matchless Hero wanted this group of people to achieve. He had specifically chosen these people to seek revenge after they were defeated. They would seek help from their own guilds, their own teams, and their own friends. As a result, more and more people started looking for trouble, and Matchless Hero's goal was achieved. However, the use of teleportation scrolls, more people wanted to go to Cloud City, which was a very overpowered situation. Only then would the teleportation scrolls be useful. But, thinking about it again, the other party also had to go, and Matchless didn't have any obligation to provide teleportation scrolls. Then, the main use of the teleportation scrolls was, to sell. After thinking about this, a question that had been bothering him for a long time suddenly floated up in his mind. Vaguely, he seemed to see some shadows. The 31 people returned to their respective cities and began to prepare. Afterwards, they contacted each other, and as expected, there was only one problem, the problem of the journey. The furthest among them was on the opposite side of Cloud City. The distance between the two cities was about 3 hours, and even if they didn't sleep, it would still take at least 2 days. If they were to calculate the time they spent online every day, it wouldn't be a problem to walk for 3 to 5 days. "This is too scary, I think it's better to get some teleportation scrolls and fly." In the game, players had to walk to level up, to do quests, to find people, and to do everything else. The lack of public transportation and rental cars had made the players very tired of walking. The low drop rate of teleportation scrolls meant that they weren't cheap, which caused the players to protest for a long time. Everyone begged the game company to make teleportation scrolls as cheap as the cheapest wine in a tavern, and to sell them to beggars on the streets. "Teleportation scrolls aren't cheap right now," someone said. Due to the heaven-defying equipment toss event, scrolls were banned in the end due to a problem with mailboxes, so the business of teleportation scrolls didn't explode. However, before the game developers took action, scrolls were already being sold like crazy, and the prices had already risen. The event had just ended, and the prices had already fallen, but it wasn't going to happen so quickly. If we ask Matchless, can it be cheaper? Someone suggested. If he's willing to do it cheaper, he'll definitely take the initiative to mention it to us. He's purposely acting as if he's forgotten about it. It's better not to make it awkward. Of course, there were people who understood. Actually, the other party only has about 200 people. Even if we each bring 10 brothers over, we'll already be on par with them in terms of numbers. Do you mean to use scrolls? That scroll has 4 scrolls, that's at least 12. What's the use of 10? How much is a scroll now? Fuck, I just went to take a look, our auction house is offering 3,000. Fuck, will anyone buy it for 3,000? I still have 4 scrolls with me, help me sell them in your main city later. Walk or fly? How many people would fly if they flew? Everyone discussed these questions over and over again. This person asked that person asked that person, this person asked that person, this person asked that person, this person asked that person, and this person asked that person. In the end, everyone still had their own plans. Those who were willing to spend money had already begun to look for the cheapest scrolls to sell, those who were unwilling had already begun to recruit brothers who were willing to go on a long journey with them. The extremely overpowered world-class crusade officially began its curtains. Butterfly Knot, a new round of bloodshed. Chapter 883. The crusade had spread across many major cities in the parallel world, but each major city only had one core member participating. In order to save money on travel expenses, no one was willing to bring too many people. After making their own plans, the 31 heroes finally set out on the road. Those who used scrolls, those who walked, those who had more people, those who had fewer people. Everyone agreed to form a team after arriving at Cloud Peak City so that they could have a common channel of communication. For those who wanted to use scrolls, obtaining scrolls was a more time-consuming matter. After that, flying to Cloud City didn't even take a minute. Before long, all the scroll-using players from number 31 middle school had arrived in Cloud City. After contacting each other, the party was already formed. The party leader was a player called Weathered Frost. He was a mage from Thousand Chasm City and was one of the core members of the Level 6 Guild, together in Wind and Rain. He was also a famous person on the mage leaderboard. However, the reason why he was the party leader was because he was the first person to contact the others after arriving in Cloud City. So, he formed a party and invited others to join him. After this team was formed, everyone began to consider a very important problem. Everyone had come to Cloud City with the same goal in mind. In terms of total number of people, they exceeded very defying, but they were 31 groups of people from 31 main cities. Not to mention tacit understanding between each other, they weren't even familiar with each other. It seemed impossible to cultivate tacit understanding between each other, but at the very least, everyone should elect a person to be the unified commander. Otherwise, if they fought against very defying in a group battle, they might not be able to win even if they outnumbered him. As the top talents in the game, they understood this logic. But who should they nominate? That was too difficult. The 31 of them had only just met each other, so it was impossible to choose someone that everyone would be satisfied with. Randomly choose someone. But how could that be randomly chosen? I think the 31 of us should have no problem commanding a group battle, right? The people who had already arrived in Cloud City agreed on the coordinates to meet up while discussing this problem in the party channel. The 31 people who came weren't lone souls like apple vinegar. They all held important positions in a large party, and without the ability to command, they wouldn't be able to hold their positions. That's why it doesn't matter who it is, we just need a unified commander, another person said. Let's draw lots, someone suggested. Isn't this too casual? Whether it's drawing lots or something else, we'll have to wait for everyone to arrive. In short, there must be a commander-in-chief. Once he's selected, everyone will definitely listen to his commands. Everyone who's here now has no objections, right? No, no. Those who had already arrived expressed their opinions one after another. We have a total of 31 people, but only 7 of us have arrived, said a weather-beaten man. Stingy bastards, are you not willing to use the scrolls? Someone said disdainfully. How many people did you bring? Everyone began to ask each other about this information. 20 people. How about you? I only brought 16 people. I also have 20 people, everyone reported their numbers. No matter how many there were, it was still a multiple of 4. One scroll was for 4 people, after all. Any more and it would be a waste. While these 7 people were on their way to the rendezvous location, several more people arrived in Cloud City one after another. Weathered Frost had already told everyone that the team had been established, so those who arrived immediately contacted him to join the team. By the time the first 7 people gathered at the rendezvous location, a total of 18 people had already arrived in Cloud City, more than half of the 31 people. The other 13 Weathered Frost also confirmed the news. 7 of them had already decided to walk to Cloud City. They definitely wouldn't arrive today, and would probably arrive tomorrow morning. The other 6 people were still looking around for cheap teleportation scrolls. On the whole, most of them were willing to spend money on scrolls. As a result, everyone looked down on the 7 who refused to use the scrolls, both openly and secretly. We're at the rendezvous location XXX. Everyone, come over first. Weathered Frost said in the team. Those who are using scrolls will probably arrive soon. Those 7 brothers who are coming on foot, should we wait for them? Someone asked in the channel. We'll talk about it later. The 7 people who arrived first waited at the rendezvous location. They weren't in the mood to appreciate the city scenery. Not long after, a familiar-looking person with a group of people appeared in their line of sight. It was obviously one of the 31 people. Hi. Over here. Weathered Frost took the initiative to wave in greeting. He could recognize this person, but he couldn't remember his name. 31 people, how could he remember them in the blink of an eye? Brother Weathered Frost. Unexpectedly, the person who came called out his name immediately. Then, he called out the names of the other 6 and greeted them one by one. It seemed like he remembered all of them. This made the weather-beaten man feel a little awkward, but he had to bite the bullet and said, brother, who are you again? This name doesn't seem to match. Come again, the other said with a smile. Oh. Weathered Frost immediately had an impression, and said a little embarrassedly, you have a good memory, everyone remembers. Hee. Once again, he chuckled. After greeting him, Weathered Frost greeted the group of people that Come Again had brought with him. Everyone introduced themselves to each other, and it was very lively. At this moment, suddenly, someone gently pulled Weathered Frost from the side. Weathered Frost turned his head, and saw that it was one of the 7 people that had arrived first. What was his name again? He fucking forgot it again, look over there. Weathered Frost gave a look in a certain direction. Weathered Frost looked in the direction that he was pointing at, and there stood a guy that seemed to have come from the same direction as Come Against group. The person beside him continued to speak in a low voice, can you see the guild emblem on his chest? Weathered Frost wasn't a marksman, and he couldn't see it clearly from such a distance. However, the person talking to him was a marksman. Weathered Frost heard his words, and immediately reacted, is it very overpowered? It should be. The emblem has the word overpowered on it, and it's the same as Forever's description. The marksman said. Then, don't say it in the channel, or else he'll notice if everyone pays attention to it. Then he might be on guard against us. We're still in the dark, and if we catch them off guard, we can avoid a lot of losses. The marksman said. Brother, you're very meticulous. Weathered Frost praised. It's only right. The marksman said. What's your name? Weathered Frost asked. The marksman rolled his eyes. He had been introduced to them before. Wasn't this guy a little forgetful? How could he not remember so quickly? He had no choice but to say it again, Arrow's divine judgment. Oh, right. I'm sorry. Weathered Frost said. I say, Weathered Frost continued, it's good to be meticulous, but aren't you being a little too meticulous? Just because we all pay attention to him, he'll know that we're going to do something very overpowered. They should understand their situation by now, so they'll definitely be more sensitive, so it's better for us to be careful. Arrow's divine judgment said. But you see, Weathered Frost said, I think he's already noticed us. Oh. Arrow of the divine swordsman preached that he didn't want this suspicious person to notice his observation, so his eyes were always drifting. Every once in a while, he would glance in that direction, and when he spoke to Wind and Frost, he would look at him even more seriously. When he heard Weathered Frost's words, he immediately looked in that direction. His eagle eye, as a sharpshooter, could see more clearly than a man who had seen many trials and hardships. Was he not? The man was staring fixedly at them. Is he looking at us? Arrow's divine judgment was confused for a moment, but the person had already raised his hand and waved at them. Then, he walked straight towards the two of them. Arrow's divine judgment and Weathered Frost looked at each other in dismay. As the person got closer, the others who were still chatting with each other began to notice him. The badge on his chest had the word, Defy. Everyone immediately made the same judgment as Arrow's divine judgment. He's an extremely overpowered person. While Arrow's divine judgment was still being careful, there were already people shouting in the team channel. There were even people who were about to pull out their weapons. Don't panic. Stop your people. Let's watch first. Weathered Frost immediately shouted in the team channel. Their team channel only had people of the same level as their boss. Everyone else couldn't reach the limit. News spread quickly. Those who were pulling out their weapons immediately stopped. Some stuffed their weapons back, while others kept their hands in their pockets, ready to pull them out at any time. At this time, the person had already walked up to them. He smiled and looked at Arrow's divine judgment and Weathered Frost. Brother, what's up? Weathered Frost spoke as if nothing had happened. Where did you guys come from? Asked the person. Weathered Frost exchanged glances with, you guys, and replied, we're not from the same place. Oh, so you're here in Cloud City to look for some overpowered trouble? Asked the person. What do you mean? Everyone's expression changed. The person only nodded, I'm waiting for you guys to PK. One person facing over 100 people and saying that he was waiting for them to PK was too shocking. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, they looked at this person's black robe and clearly identified this person's class. Everyone came to a realization. It's 1,000 miles drunk. This is that PK madman. Qianli drunk? Weathered Frost continued to speak for everyone. Yes. You seem to know that we're coming. I guessed. You know who we are. I don't know. You can introduce yourself. I'm Weathered Frost. Weathered Frost really introduced himself. Then, everyone saw the legendary Qianli drunk take out a small notebook. After a while, he raised his head and said, yes, you have no PK value. What was this? Everyone was confused. Was there something wrong with Qianli drunk's head? In their team channel, the 8 big players who were already there were already negotiating. Those who weren't there yet heard that they had bumped into the overpowered Qianli drunk and immediately rushed over. Everyone was more or less curious about this legendary expert. Some people had already asked around in the channel, and the description of 1,000 miles drunk they received was inexplicable. This person was a little baffling, and his appearance was also a little baffling. More importantly, he inexplicably knew that they would come, and he seemed to know why they were here. He said it was a wild guess, but who would believe this answer? Although they didn't intend to completely conceal their identities during this operation, they had just arrived at Cloud Peak City, and they hadn't even gathered yet, but someone had already taken the initiative to look for them. Moreover, it seemed that they had been waiting for them for a long time. This was a little too abnormal. Did someone leak the information? Weathered Frost asked in the team channel. Now isn't the time to talk about this. Arrow Adjudicator said, Drunk Chinli Drunk is still standing in front of you. That's right, 1,000 Miles Drunk was still standing in front of them. More than 100 of them were about to surround and attack him, but this person was still so calm and composed. He didn't even take a step back. What was that look in his eyes? Was it excitement? Was this person crazy? Let's do it. Someone couldn't hold back anymore. I'm wondering if this is a trap. Weathered Frost praised Arrow Adjudicator for being meticulous, but at this critical moment, he seemed to be even more meticulous than Arrow Adjudicator. What kind of trap? Someone asked. I don't know. But, his appearance is too strange. Weathered Frost said. You've already asked this question. No matter what, he's in front of us now. He's made his intentions clear. Are we just going to leave without saying a word? Someone said. Let me do it. Weathered Frost said. You do it? Yes, I do it. Everyone wasn't familiar with each other. At this time, Weathered Frost took the initiative to challenge Chinli Drunk. Even if he went to die, no one would be too concerned. So, no one stopped him. It was good to take this opportunity to see how strong Chinli Drunk was. You're waiting for us to PK? Weathered Frost walked up and asked. Gu Fei nodded. I'm here. Weathered Frost said. Oh. A few more is fine, or all at once. I don't mind. I'm used to it. Gu Fei spoke very seriously. He hadn't experienced a 1v1 in a long time. He didn't even know when it was. Ha, if I'm going to die, there'll naturally be more people coming. Weathered Frost looked very confident. Oh. Gu Fei nodded, then waved his hand towards the crowd. Everyone, make way. I don't want to get hurt. Everyone was instantly thrown into chaos. Wasn't it better for him to get hurt by accident? What did he mean by asking everyone to make way? Even though it was chaotic, everyone still made way. Even without Gu Fei's reminder, they would still make way. A battle between mages was the easiest way to get hurt. As the crowd scattered, Gu Fei had already unsheathed his sword. Night Streak Sword. The experienced person said this with a tone of admiration and envy. The Night Streak stats had long since been exposed on the website. Its magic damage and physical damage were the envy of all the classes. He's here. Gu Fei shouted in a low voice. Suddenly, he disappeared from everyone's sight. Ah! The audience cried out. They could clearly see that the instant Chinli disappeared, he had already appeared behind Weathered Frost. His sword was already raised, and he slashed down. Their cries of surprise seemed to come a bit slower than the sword. The continued. For the surprised audience, this was a bit too long. This was because everything had happened too quickly. After the first everyone immediately wanted to a second time. However, there was no time to rest, so they simply didn't stop the first and continued The reason why everyone wanted to continue was because when Chinli's sword slashed down, Weathered Frost suddenly disappeared. The way he disappeared was exactly the same as Chinli's. He disappeared from here, came out from there, and appeared behind drunken Chinli. It was also teleportation. Both of them teleported. Everything happened in the short span of a second. It was a high-tempo game. The audience had been surprised twice, so they could only mix it up. Everyone in the world knew that Chinli could teleport when he was drunk. However, he definitely didn't expect that the mage he was fighting, Weathered Frost, could do the same. So, he was going to lose this time. That was what everyone thought, but no one expected Chinli to react so quickly and make such an accurate judgment. Weathered Frost flashed behind him. Qianli couldn't retract his sword in time, but his left arm had already swung behind him. Everyone seemed to hear a bang. Weathered Frost staggered, his hand covering his nose as he took a few steps back. His nose was sore and his hand was wet. He put down his hand and saw that he hadn't lost much health, but his nose was bleeding. Both of his nostrils were flowing. "You can teleport too." Qianli turned around at this time and spoke to him. He wasn't in a hurry to chase after him. Weathered Frost hurriedly nodded while looking for a piece of tissue to plug his nostrils. If he didn't, the blood would flow into his mouth. "You're also an electric mage," Qianli said. Weathered Frost's hand trembled and he almost stuffed the tissue into his mouth. This Qianli was drunk and only knew that he was an electric mage. Could it be that he didn't appraise himself before PK? Weathered Frost thought as he cleaned up. Qianli didn't take advantage of this time to make a move. The surrounding audience was silent. But if it's teleportation, that kind of movement. "You didn't look at the target. How did you do it?" Gu Fei asked in confusion. Weathered Frost wiped the blood from his nose as he replied, "You can't. Then your proficiency is too low." "Oh." Gu Fei suddenly understood. He had to admit this. Although he intentionally used teleportation frequently, this skill had a relatively long cooldown. Even if Gu Fei used it as soon as the cooldown was up, with his time online, he wouldn't be able to use it much in a day. Compared to those dedicated players who played for more than 10 hours a day, Gu Fei believed that his proficiency for this skill wasn't high. "Are you done?" Gu Fei asked. "I'm done." The blood couldn't be stopped quickly. Weathered Frost could only leave 2 tissues in his nostrils. It was a comical sight. But at this time, he had already pulled out his staff. "Coming." Gu Fei raised his sword and charged forward. At the same time, he raised his staff and shouted, "Lightning Array." Chapter 884. Lightning spells were known for their speed. This spell, which was well versed in wind and frost, was ostentatious and imposing. After chanting, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the blink of an eye. Streaks of pale blue lightning descended from the sky. Their height was about the same as the heavenly fire wheel, but the speed of their descent was on a completely different level. By the time he finished chanting, the lightning had already struck the ground. In terms of sound effects, these 2 spells were also very different. The heavenly fire wheel roared and struck in one go, but this lightning spell was like popping beans. It was obviously not an attack like the heavenly fire wheel that could be finished in one round. Since learning this spell, experience of wind and frost had never failed before. This spell was a combination of field control and attack. The person being bombarded wouldn't be instantly killed, but they would be trapped in the spell and unable to move. At this time, if other spells were thrown, the opponent would naturally die. Experience of wind and frost had this confidence, which was why he said that he wanted to fight with Qianli in a one-on-one battle. However, Qianli could teleport, and this skill could easily jump out of the range of the lightning spell. Experience of wind and frost had originally thought of a lot of plans to trick Qianli into using this skill, but who would have thought that he would use it on his own initiative? This was because Qianli's way of using Drunk's teleportation was very different from a real mage like him. How could a normal mage use teleportation to get close? It was more likely to use this spell to escape and maintain distance. Gu Fei's attack was considered sudden. If experience of wind and frost hadn't also used teleportation and was familiar with it, he would have definitely been cut down. At that time, he had already flashed behind Gu Fei and wanted to use the tactic that Gu Fei had prepared to use to attack Gu Fei. Who would have thought that the opponent's reaction would be so fast? Before he could even make a move, the opponent's elbow had already knocked out a nosebleed. The PK between the 2 mages was actually so rough that even their HP was spurting out. This was the first time in experience of wind and frost's life. Fortunately, the other party did not continue to pursue him. Instead, he chatted with him. Once they were done cleaning up, the 2 of them attacked again, and immediately used his killer move without hesitation. The thunder light array was activated, and the lightning within the array was dazzling. Gu Fei had long been engulfed by the lightning, and could not be seen from the outside of the array. However, the experienced Frost knew in his heart that although his skill's formation was powerful, the damage was not that exaggerated. It did not have the ability to kill his opponent instantly. Using the formation to control his opponent's movements, and then quickly followed up with other spells, would he be able to truly defeat his opponent? Because of this, other people didn't know about Gu Fei's current situation, but those who had experienced the hardships of life knew that he was definitely not dead. Moreover, he had already remembered where Gu Fei was standing, so he didn't dare to be negligent and threw a bunch of spells in that direction. He was already very familiar with this technique, and the other mages around him were all very impressed. If a mage wanted to cast spells quickly, they had to speak clearly and speak quickly. Experience of Wind and Frost's speaking speed made all the mages present feel ashamed of their inferiority. This skill couldn't be strengthened by equipment, scrolls, or anything else. It all depended on one's mouth. After casting all the spells, such as the flaming tree, fire wheel, fireball, lightning, and so on, he let out a long sigh. There might still be people who could survive in such a situation, but Experience of Wind and Frost believed that it wouldn't be Qianli drunk, because he had already appraised Qianli drunk. His equipment was a mess, and he didn't have any powerful magic defense equipment, so how could he resist the random bombardment of so many spells? Moreover, this guy was a mage who focused on agility, and didn't add any intelligence or spirit, so his magic defense was even worse than an ordinary mage's. Experience of Wind and Frost was full of confidence. At this time, he let out a long sigh and turned his head, wanting to show everyone a victorious smile. Who would have thought that just as he turned his head, he would see everyone's astonished gazes staring behind him? Experience of Wind and Frost was startled and promptly turned his head, only to see Qianli drunk's black silhouette already shrouding him, that dark purple longsword slashing down. Experience of Wind and Frost didn't feel any pain, and at this time, his mind wasn't even on his own life or death. He just couldn't understand, how could Qianli drunk not die? The flames of fire spells were already ignited in the array. It was clear that Qianli drunk had rushed out of the lightning array before these spells could be cast. This kind of situation. It wasn't that Experience of Wind and Frost hadn't encountered this kind of situation before, but at that time, his opponent had come prepared and was wearing lightning resistance equipment, which allowed him to withstand the damage of the lightning array. The lightning array couldn't instantly kill a person, but if you randomly moved around in the array, you would be hit by lightning multiple times, which was equivalent to receiving multiple attacks, and definitely wouldn't be able to survive. Experience of Wind and Frost's equipment had long since been appraised, and the lightning array activated very quickly. It was impossible for someone to completely change their equipment in an instant. Moreover, Qianli drunk clearly hadn't changed his equipment, and his black robe was still the same black robe, so how could he not die and rush out? Experience of Wind and Frost's mind wasn't on PvP, but as one of the top mages in the world, his equipment wasn't bad either. Gu Fei's dual flame flash wasn't able to instantly kill him. However, following up with a hook kick, Experience of Wind and Frost didn't react at all, and was immediately hooked to the ground. With how professional Gu Fei was, he immediately sensed that there was something wrong with his opponent. It was natural that he was fast, and even if his opponent saw this hook kick, he definitely wouldn't be able to dodge it. However, his opponent's gaze wasn't something that a person in battle should have. It was as if he had lost his soul and didn't know what he was looking at. At this time, he had already fallen to the ground, as if he didn't know his own situation. Towards this guy who dared to fight him one-on-one, Gu Fei still admired his courage, so he immediately stopped and didn't immediately kill him. Looking at Experience of Wind and Frost lying on the ground, he asked, "What's wrong? You? How did you get out?" Experience of Wind and Frost was desperately struggling with this question. "I ran out," Gu Fei said. "Of course I know, I'm asking you how you ran out. How much health do you have? How much magic defense do you have? Your clothes, your rings. Do you have a passive lightning resistance skill?" Experience of Wind and Frost said all of his suspicions in one go. With high health and high magic defense, it was possible to survive, and Gu Fei's robe and 2 rings didn't show any attributes when Experience of Wind and Frost appraised them. Perhaps there was something special about them, and some skill that strengthened defense was also very likely. These were all deductions made from the perspective of a professional gamer, so for a non-professional gamer like Gu Fei, he was instantly at a loss. What did you say? You rushed out of the lightning formation and didn't die. How did you do it? Experience of Wind and Frost asked. If I didn't get hit by the lightning, of course I wouldn't die. What's so strange about that? Gu Fei asked back. Didn't get hit by the lightning? How is that possible? Experience of Wind and Frost's shock increased again. This answer was even more difficult to accept than if his opponent had used some equipment or skill that he had never heard of. Why not? It's not like there isn't a gap between each lightning attack. If you looked carefully, then of course you wouldn't get hit. Gu Fei said. Is there a gap between the lightning? You're asking me about your own skill. Experience of Wind and Frost almost spat out blood. The other players were also dumbfounded. They had all seen the power of the lightning array. How could they find a gap between the lightning bolts and get out? What kind of eyesight was that? Even if he could find it. This should be something that could only be done carefully, right? This guy was actually able to escape in the blink of an eye. How was that possible? Bullshit, this was definitely bullshit. Hurry up and stand up. Be serious and finish the fight. Gu Fei said to Experience of Wind and Frost. Experience of Wind and Frost stood up and suddenly teleported into the crowd. He then announced, okay, my duel with you is over. Experience of Wind and Frost came to Cloud City to earn what he wanted, not to die and lose levels. Right now, his most confident trick had already been broken by Qianli's drunk. Moreover, Qianli's attack was so fast that he didn't know how to dodge it. That damage caused Experience of Wind and Frost, who had just been hit by a dual flame flash, to come back to his senses. His heart immediately sped up. That barbaric attack. Experience of Wind and Frost took out the paper ball from his nose. His nose immediately started bleeding again. I'm not going to fight anymore. No matter what, I can't fight anymore. You bastard, you're a mess. Gu Fei shook his head and frowned. I should be the one talking about you. Sneak out of the lightning light array. How could there be such a thing? Are you cheating? Experience of Wind and Frost retorted. As for Gu Fei's explanation, he still couldn't accept it. He felt that this was at most something that existed in theory. It was impossible for it to actually happen. It was like someone explaining that there was nothing wrong with going south or north because the earth was round. Therefore, going north or south was the same. This was just being unreasonable. At this moment, Gu Fei, who had experienced many hardships, felt that Gu Fei was being unreasonable. He felt that Gu Fei was trying to cover up by making up such a reason. He must have some other magical method that was inconvenient to expose. Sigh. Gu Fei shook his head and sighed. It was really difficult to talk to these people who didn't understand the inner meaning of things. Is there anyone else who wants to duel? Gu Fei was too lazy to waste his saliva with Experience of Wind and Frost. The rest of the people looked at each other. Duel? After witnessing Qianli's strange strength, no one wanted to test his strength anymore. At this time, they were discussing whether or not to fight again. 1,000 Miles Drunk had foreseen their goal and foreseen their arrival, but this strange question had yet to be answered. At this time, someone had already expressed his opinion. Qianli was prepared, which meant that they were extremely heaven-defying. Was it Qianli who came alone? Or were the extremely heaven-defying people already nearby? If it was just Qianli alone, there was no need to be afraid of more than 100 of us. But what if the extremely heaven-defying people were all here? Everyone agreed with this. If the other party was prepared, how could they only come alone? There must have been some terrifying trap set up in the surroundings. This Qianli was only the first step in their trap. As for what the plot was, they couldn't see through it. This was what was worth having a headache about. Tell those who haven't arrived to hurry up. If everyone is here, even if the extremely heaven-defying people are prepared, there's no need to be afraid. We have the advantage in numbers. A few big shots gathered together to discuss. That's too hasty. I think we should let them not get too close first. That way, if anything happens, we can coordinate from the inside and outside, another person said. Yes, yes. That's safer. Another person nodded. But, I really can't see any ambush around here. Jian Dingtian stared at his left and right with his pair of eagle eyes. I'm not familiar with the geography. Who knows if there's a pit or a hole around here? Another person said. There are pits and holes in your main city. Another person was surprised. Yes. That person said. Which city are you from? Waterclaw City. Is it the city called Vegetable Garden City? Yes. I have friends over there. Is that so? What's their name? I think I. Hey, you too. They collectively despised those who went off topic. The two big shots who went off topic were ashamed. The brother who went through the hole in Vegetable Garden City returned to the main topic. That's why we can't easily conclude that there's no ambush. For example, that house over there. What if it's an extremely heaven-defying property? This kind of ambush can be done in any main city, right? Everyone hurriedly nodded in agreement. Is there anyone else who wants to fight one-on-one? Gu Fei shouted again. Look, he's getting impatient. He's impatient for us to fall into a trap, right? How about we ignore him and leave him hanging? Isn't that too childish? Don't tell me he dares to take the initiative to attack over 100 of us. According to Eternal, he really dares. Then why hasn't he made a move yet? Is there anyone else who wants to fight one-on-one? Gu Fei shouted for the third time, answering the question that the big shots were wondering about. Could it be, he's seriously asking this question? The big shots all felt that it was inconceivable. This drunk Qianli didn't seem to have the same way of thinking as them. Where did this person come from? At this moment, Weathered Frost continued to speak on behalf of everyone to drunk Qianli. I think we should forget about fighting one-on-one. Where are your extremely heaven-defying friends? You can't be the only one here, right? Ask them all to come out and meet us. I'm the only one here. Gu Fei said. Everyone laughed. This person was really simple. Directly denying it like this was too obvious. It seemed like there really were other people around. Extremely heaven-defying friends, come out. We know you guys are here. Since we know each other's intentions, let's fight to our heart's content. Weathered Frost said in a clear voice. What's wrong with you? Didn't I say that I'm the only one here? While everyone felt that Gu Fei was a complete mess, Gu Fei also felt that this Weathered Frost was sick in the head. Then where are the others? Weathered Frost couldn't help but ask. You guys aren't the only ones here. The others are obviously going to greet your other friends. Gu Fei said. What, why didn't you say so earlier? Weathered Frost's face paled in fright. He hurriedly sent a message to tell the others that hadn't arrived yet to be on the lookout for an ambush. In the end, he saw Gu Fei look at him as if he was an idiot. Are you an idiot? I already said it. If you guys know our people are here, how are you going to ambush them? As soon as he finished speaking, Weathered Frost had only written half of his message when an important character who hadn't arrived yet shouted in the team channel. Fuck, it's an ambush. An ambush. Chapter 885. What's going on? What's going on? The 8 of them, who had been through thick and thin, shouted in the team channel, but there was no reply. In the game, no reply didn't mean that the person was dead. On the contrary, No reply meant that the person was still alive and full of energy. It was precisely because they wanted to live that they didn't have time to send messages. The 8 of them were nervous. They came from different places, so their numbers were incredible. However, once they split up, there were only about 20 people in each group. That wasn't enough. Who would have thought that they would be targeted as soon as they teleported to the Cloud City? The 8 of them were nervous, but at the same time, they were glad that they had arrived early enough to regroup before the enemy ambushed them. What's wrong? What happened? Someone suddenly spoke in the party channel. His name was Floral Shawl. The person who could speak in the party channel was obviously one of the 31 of them. He had been through many hardships and had a forgetful personality. He didn't know who this person was, but when he tried again, he immediately replied, "Some of my friends who came over were ambushed." "How are you?" "Me? I'm fine. I'm coming over. Are you guys alright?" Floral Shawl asked. A few more people spoke after Floral Shawl. They were all people who hadn't encountered any trouble and were rushing over. "We only have one Qianli, drunk, no." The person who sent the message didn't even have time to finish typing before he couldn't continue. Gu Fei, who had asked 3 times in a row if anyone wanted to challenge him to a duel, naturally wouldn't continue asking after 3 times. At this moment, he had already made his move without any hesitation. An area of effect spell was thrown at the place where the players were the most densely packed. Apart from the 8 VIPs, the other players weren't weaklings either. They were all elites of their respective cities. Although they were surprised by Gu Fei's spell, they all dodged it. "Fuck, this guy really dares to make a move." Sword Adjudicator yelled as he knocked an arrow and fired it at Gu Fei. Gu Fei dodged to the side and used teleportation to fly into the crowd. Slashing left and right, he immediately began a massacre. "Take him down." The big shots were clearly still somewhat confused about Gu Fei's strength. When they saw Gu Fei's actions, they felt that he was courting death. They were outnumbered, and instead of keeping their distance, they actually jumped into the crowd. Even if they were fighting monsters, they wouldn't do something so idiotic. The elites bravely stepped forward, wanting to take down Gu Fei, but in an instant, 4 of them had already turned into white light. The priests behind them were stunned. They didn't even have a chance to recover. The damage was too high. 1 slash would kill him. "Those with low HP, don't go up," someone shouted. This person was one of the 8 players. His ID was first-class hypothermia, and he was an expert cleric. He could tell at a glance that Qianli's drunken had specifically targeted the classes with low health. Those with high health were just a casual crowd control attack, so they weren't his main target. This guy seems to be a bit of a mess, but in terms of combat, he's meticulous to every step. Just who is he? First-class hypothermia thought to himself as he waved his hand to command the other clerics to heal. Gu Fei quickly killed a few of those with low health. The other clerics were so surprised that they thought their existence was meaningless. In fact, for classes with high health like warriors, Gu Fei's attacks could also take care of them. It was just that he couldn't insta-kill them. If these clerics only focused on the ones who were insta-killed and ignored the warriors, then the warriors would also be in trouble. First-class hypothermia, who was experienced, saw this point. Being a cleric in the parallel world was actually very difficult. It required a lot of concentration. Although they had some support from the system, most of the time, they still had to rely on their own eyes to make decisions. When Gu Fei broke into the enemy's formation, the opponents were a bit confused for a moment, but they were moving in an orderly manner. The archers and mages naturally retreated to the periphery, while the warriors and paladins supported each other to prepare for a pincer attack. The thieves all went into stealth, waiting for an opportunity to move. Everything was in order. Everyone thought that the situation would soon be under control, but no one expected that their nightmare had only just begun. They set up their formation, they moved, they wanted to pincer Qianli's drunken, but the result was that Qianli's movements were always faster than theirs. Qianli's drunken, who weaved through more than 100 people, moved erratically, and they couldn't catch him at all. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed what kind of movement this was. It was a completely unthinking movement, but every step seemed to be made after careful thought. He either dodged an attack, escaped a pincer attack, or stepped into the perfect position to attack. The elites couldn't predict or judge, they could only chase after Qianli's drunken footsteps. The result? The slow ones couldn't keep up with his pace, and the fast ones, when they caught up, were killed with a turn of his body. The priests were all recovering like crazy, because they couldn't catch the gap between Qianli's attacks at all. They could only keep farming like this with their lives on the line. If they could get to the right spot, they would be saved. If they couldn't, white light. The eyes of the 8 VIPs gradually showed fear. They were more and more convinced. Killing 1,000 people, this might be an exaggeration, but killing 100 people didn't seem difficult for Qianli's drunken. They were experts, but in front of Qianli's drunken, experts like them were completely useless, because their strength wasn't on the same level at all. It was like a group of rabbits facing a tiger. It didn't matter if you were a white rabbit, a black rabbit, a strong rabbit, or a speed rabbit. In front of the tiger, you were just a rabbit, and a slap from the tiger would turn you into a rabbit pancake. Strength? They weren't on the same level, so what was there to talk about strength? It was more like telling a joke. Stop, 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 don't chase. They knew that the current situation had already been brought into Qianli's rhythm by drunken. If this continued, it would become an endless cycle until all of them were wiped out. Maintain the formation, don't scatter, don't chase, use silence. The priests, low temperature, also shouted loudly. They hadn't had the time to discuss who would be the commander. At this moment, whoever had an idea would immediately shout it out, so there was no time to discuss. However, low temperature's instruction was also in line with everyone's wishes. The other 7 VIPs didn't have any objections, and they also knew that they couldn't have any objections at this time. The 100 or so people hurriedly followed this instruction, no longer attempting to kill Qianli's drunken. They each went their own way, wanting to first firmly form an offensive and defensive formation. But at this moment, their 100 or so people came from 8 different cities, and the drawbacks of different guilds were revealed. Although in terms of class composition, their ratio was perfect, the habits of players from different cities and teams were different. They used their own understanding of the way to proceed, and these 100 or so people actually couldn't form an ideal formation in a short period of time. For a moment, it actually seemed a little disorderly. Low temperature commanded loudly, but other than the people he brought with him who quickly understood, the others were more or less at a loss. Some couldn't even understand the words low temperature used to command. What was even more frightening was that Qianli's drunken didn't let go of this flaw. This frightening enemy was no longer the same as when he fought drunken, chatting, wiping nosebleeds, and caring about people asking, "What's wrong?" His swift footsteps seemed to have countless incarnations, and for a moment, he was unable to coordinate with the rest of the team. Low temperature, who was the loudest in command, was almost killed by him. Fortunately, he was a priest with thick skin, and Gu Fei couldn't defeat him no matter how many times he used his sword. In the end, he had no choice but to leave. Moving without stopping for a moment. This was the most important point for Gu Fei when he was outnumbered. Wasting so much time in low temperature was already a very dangerous thing. If he was careless and really got surrounded and killed, Gu Fei also didn't have a good way to escape. So he needed to constantly move, so that the opponent would never be able to catch his position. The expressions of the 8 VIPs became more and more unsightly. As Gu Fei moved around, their numbers constantly decreased. At this time, they had already lost more than 20 people. Low temperature commanded for a long time, but there wasn't much of an improvement. His loud voice even attracted Qianli's attention, and he almost killed himself. What kind of situation is this? The 8 people were speechless. Just as the situation was getting out of hand, they suddenly saw Qianli stuff his drunken sword into his pocket, and with a flash of white light, he disappeared with a whoosh. The elites didn't have time to react. They were still nervously looking left and right, afraid that the black figure would suddenly step in front of them. Actually, how hard could it be for 100 people to stand in a group? The key was that while everyone was not very coordinated, there was also Gu Fei causing trouble in the middle. One moment he would rush here and slash, the next moment he would run there and kill. Just as the people stood in a formation, they would scatter after dodging his attacks. When they turned around and gathered again, Qinli would kill in a circle and then turn back. With this kind of repetition, how could he command low temperature? Gu Fei was only controlling his own rhythm, but he had to control the rhythm of 100 people at the same time. The difficulty in itself was even greater. At this time, Gu Fei had already disappeared. Those who had come back to their senses were stunned, and those who hadn't came back to their senses were still carefully moving. When they realized that the other party didn't come out to stop them, they were all ecstatic. But when they looked around, they realized that the other party had just left. Why did he suddenly leave? The 8 VIPs were confused. It might be a trap again. Everyone, get into position. Low temperature could finally command everyone when no one was causing trouble, and it was very precious. How's everyone's losses? The experienced one asked. I have 4. I have 3 on my side. Fuck, I lost 5. My people are okay, only 2 died. Everyone reported their losses. After hearing that, the experienced one looked at his own side and was instantly speechless. What's wrong? The others asked him about his abnormality. No wonder he left. The experienced one said. What's wrong? We lost a total of 29 people. The experienced one said. Chapter 886. 29 people died, so he left. Only players who didn't come into contact with PK wouldn't be able to understand such a cause and effect relationship. Of course, the big shots at the scene weren't such pure players. For a moment, they were all speechless. So he went to clear his PK points. If he was done, was he going to come back and continue to deal with them? What was even more tragic was that the people who died went straight back to their hometowns. After arriving in Cloud City, they weren't in a hurry to register. They all wanted to meet up first before doing anything else. They didn't expect it to be like this. Let's leave here first. We can't wait here any longer. We should take the initiative to meet up with the others. After all, we're the one with the most fighting power right now. Hypothermia said. We're the one with the most fighting power. After being beaten so badly by Qianli's one drink, why did these words sound so ironic? You guys know what I mean. Hypothermia said helplessly. What he meant was, of course, that compared to the others, they were a team of at least 8 people. Naturally, they were the team with the most combat power. Yet, these guys insisted on thinking about the awkward battle just now. Weren't they ashamed? You're right. Let's go. Weathered Frost agreed with Hypothermia. He asked for the others' location in the channel, indicating that he would take the initiative to meet up with them. What about the other bosses? Are they okay? Is there anyone who can say something? Weathered Frost continued to shout in the channel. There were still a few big shots who still hadn't heard from them. The battle seemed to be in a stalemate. Everyone was helpless. Suddenly, a system notification rang. A player was judged to have left the maximum range of the team and automatically left the team. Everyone's heart tightened. Now that he had left the largest range of the team, it could only mean that the boss was dead, and the people he was with would most likely end up in a miserable state. As expected, everyone quickly received a private message from this boss. 3 words, fuck fuck fuck. What's going on? Everyone finally found someone to ask. Motherfucker, some very overpowered people already knew we were coming. Our main path was cut off. They have a lot of people. The boss's anger could not be quelled in a short period of time. At their level, their rankings on the level rankings were very important. When they went out and announced their ranking, hearing that it was in the double digits was already a great deal of face. Being in the top 10 or even the top 20 was even more so. When people introduced them, they would hang their names in front of them like a title. But now that he was dead, he had lost the chance to be called that. In the domain of 40+1, it was impossible to catch up to the previous ranking after dropping a level, unless there was a huge change in luck. Which of the top players in the world wasn't a leveling maniac? Therefore, in terms of diligence, no one would lose to anyone else. Hard work alone could not make up for this kind of loss. I wonder how the other teams are doing. The 8 of them were not in the mood to share their current feelings with this brother. Since they were not familiar with each other, they were more worried about the other teams that were in the same situation as him. They had already realized how terrifying their opponents were, so they were very concerned about how much strength they had right now. They no longer thought that they could defeat a heaven-defying expert with just a few people, nor did they think that it was an exaggeration for Ing Chi to gather experts from 31 main cities. How could they be experts? In front of Qianli's drunken, they were all rabbits. One person could torment you more than 100 times. It turned out that legendary things weren't completely legendary. They looked like legends because those things didn't hit the mark. The strength of Qianli's drunken couldn't be described with words. This wasn't fucking within the scope of a player at all. The 8 VIPs were currently worried for the other teams, but they were also discussing Qianli's drunken. Qianli's drunken was going to clear his PK points. After he was done, he could come back to kill them at any time. If they didn't hurry up and gather 300 to 500 people, they wouldn't feel safe at all. However, the development of the situation was not going in the direction they had hoped for. Soon after, the team received a system notification that someone had left the range and left the team. This was followed by an angry message that said, "Fuck, fuck." They didn't want to see this result, but they were already mentally prepared. The other side was so well prepared, how could they fight a battle that they had no confidence in? If they could wipe out one team, they could naturally wipe out 2 or 3 teams. The teams that were ambushed probably couldn't escape. The strength of each team was already about the same. It wasn't until another person left the party on his own that he finally realized that the people who were still in the party were all talking in the channel. The people who were ambushed were all wiped out, a total of 6 teams. They had just arrived at Cloud City and they had already lost 1/5 of their strength. This didn't include the 29 people that were sent back to their hometown by Qianli's drunken. Of the 18 armies that arrived first, 8 met, 6 were wiped out, and the remaining 4 were nervously meeting up. Fortunately, there were no new accidents. The 8th Route Army and the 4th Route Army met up smoothly and formed the new 12th Route Army. There were a total of 211 people. This was a number that defied the natural order of things, not to mention that Qianli's drunken was equivalent to X number of people. After the meeting, the big shots still couldn't find the sense of security they were looking for. They hurriedly contacted the 6 teams that were still slowly looking for scrolls and told them everything that had happened here. They told them to be careful and that it would be best if they could tell them the coordinates of the teleportation point. The 200 of them would go directly to meet up. Then, they contacted the brothers from the 6 teams that were killed and sent back to their hometown to inquire about their news. At this time, the 6 angry brothers were planning to gather more people, preparing to return to Cloud City to take revenge. This decision made the big shots of the 12 teams extremely happy. They couldn't wait for the 6 heartbroken people to move all of their guilds and directly unite to form an army of 10,000 people. If that was the case, Qianli shouldn't be so scary after getting drunk, right? In addition to these comrades, the 7 brothers who were still trekking through the mountains and rivers also had to be contacted. The severity of the situation had already been reflected to the 7 comrades, and the problem they needed to realize was that it was impossible for them to sit down and drink tea while waiting for them, because they had already taken the initiative to target them, and they were currently at a disadvantage. If you continue to dawdle, it is very likely that when you arrive, we will already be gone. You will have to face very overpowered alone. Sandpaper said, "Can't you guys go offline and hide first?" This person was determined to go to Cloud City. The 12 big shots of the 12 teams looked at this brother with disdain. Go offline and hide. This was a good idea, but they still had things to do. The 6 scrolls were still waiting for them to pick them up. If they were to hide, what would happen if they got taken down by very overpowered? They did not discuss this matter with the sandpaper comrade, because they thought that the sandpaper comrade would only coldly say, then can't they wait before flying? Just because of you, Boss Sandpaper's team, everyone had to go offline and wait for you to come back. Everyone was indignant, and they hated his attitude. Looking at the other 6 teams, they had already expressed that they would use their scrolls to fly over as soon as they arrived at the next main city. Ignore that guy. There's a brother here who already got the scrolls and is going to get them. Let's go pick him up at the coordinates he wants to go to, Sandpaper said to everyone. Everyone nodded and quickly went to the coordinates. Along the way, the 200 people were very restrained and no longer had the arrogant attitude they had when they first arrived. Although 4 of the teams didn't fight with Qianli and didn't get ambushed, they didn't dare to be careless after hearing the battle report and seeing how cautious the 8 teams were. On the streets where the 6 teams were ambushing, very overpowered players were taking inventory of the battlefield. All 6 teams had been completely wiped out. The probability of such a large number of deaths to not drop anything was too low. The items that dropped were distributed according to the game's common method, exchange for money. If the people present needed money, they would fork out the money and everyone would split it. If they didn't have enough money, they could pay in installments. Those who suffered losses in battle would receive more money as compensation. However, dying in a parallel world would directly cause one to lose a level. The losses were unprecedented, so it was difficult to determine how much compensation was appropriate. However, very overpowered players didn't need to worry about this because they didn't suffer any casualties from the 6 teams. Their advantage in numbers was one thing, but more importantly, their attacks caught their opponents off guard. The first wave of attacks had already wiped out half of their opponents. Although the very overpowered players weren't elites, they were led by a group of top experts. In terms of commanding, Yutian Xinming and Unscathed in battle looked like a mess, but they were actually experienced players. They weren't any weaker than any other expert. They just weren't as eye-catching as some of the experts who specialized in this area. What about yours? I don't have anything good here. They had only taken care of around 20 or so players, and some places had no harvest at all. Imperial Divine Cry had dropped 3 pieces of equipment along the way, but none of them were top-tier items that could make anyone drool. To the players who had just received a generous compensation, these items were nothing in their eyes. Nothing. Unscathed in battle didn't drop anything at all. A bunch of paupers. Yutian Xinming cursed. Although the other side also had 20 people, they couldn't compare to the Eagle Party at all. Out of the 31 people, only the leader was comparable to the members of the Eagle Party. The others were his companions in the independent guilds or mercenary groups. Not every main city had a group of the best gathered together to play. From the looks of it, the other side has around 20 people. The largest is 24, and the smallest is 16. Qianli, how are things going on your side? I'm clearing PKs, busy. Gu Fei said. Everyone fell silent. If Gu Fei was clearing PKs, then he must have killed around 29 people. Everyone knew this without even asking. This guy's efficiency was much higher than everyone else's, and he was facing a whole group of them. As expected, it was Qianli. He was the best. How many teams do you think the other side has? If there are 20 people in a team. Brother, you said. This. There should be at least 100 people. Gu Fei said. Be more precise. Brother, you said. I saw 7 or 8 of them huddled together and whispered to each other. They might be the leader. Gu Fei's observation skills couldn't be ignored. Oh, then that's 7 or 8 teams. Including these 6 teams, there are already 13 or 14 teams. There are still some that we don't know. It looks like more than 20 teams shouldn't be a problem. Brother, you finished counting. 20 teams, 20 people in a team. 400 people, TSK TSK. It's a pity that more than 100 people went back. I don't think the rest will be far behind. Yutian Xinming said. 20 teams is just an estimate. I think there are more possibilities. This time, it's all thanks to Yunteng's information that we were able to get the upper hand. Brother, you said. Don't say that. Han family young master said, this isn't information leaked by Yunteng. It's just a small matter that I accidentally learned of while chatting with a friend. Then, through my great wisdom, I came to this conclusion. Come on, he obviously leaked it to you on purpose. Yutian Xinming said. Han family young master didn't answer. In fact, how could he not know that Yunteng had intentionally revealed this to him? However, there was a subtle tacit understanding between him and Nitrite. Nothing would directly point to the other party's goal. It was as if it was just a small topic in a casual conversation. For example, this time, Nitrite just gossiped and sent a message to Han family young master. How interesting. The equipment throwing is over. Why are there suddenly so many people wanting to buy Cloud City scrolls? Of course, this wasn't something interesting. Han family young master immediately understood what Nitrite was hinting at. He replied, really? Coincidentally, I also have some friends who want to come over. Give me the exact same scroll. Thus, Han family young master found out the number of scrolls Yunteng sold. There were 4 people in one scroll, so the number was easily determined. Then, Han family young master gave a suggestion to the seller. He thought that if all the scrolls had the same coordinates, it would easily cause traffic jams. The seller thought that this suggestion was quite good. Thus, he provided different coordinates and sincerely asked Han family young master for his opinion. Han family young master was very satisfied with the seller's service. Thus, he suggested that they sell a set of scrolls to try it out. Once again, the seller humbly accepted this suggestion. Thus, in the process of friendly negotiation between the seller and the buyer, the 7 teams that bought the teleportation scrolls from Yunteng's studio to fly directly to Cloud City were doomed to tragedy. Among these 7 teams, the first team that conducted the trial operation led Gu Fei to their meeting place. The remaining 6 teams quickly got on the direct train back to their hometown. Chapter 887. The VIPs were on their way to receive reinforcements, but at the same time, they were thinking about how the news had been leaked. They didn't plan on making this operation too secretive, so they didn't emphasize any secrecy beforehand. It was possible that one of their subordinates had leaked the news. What they needed to figure out now was whether this incident was caused by gossip, or if someone had specifically leaked the news and sold them out. After all, Very Defying's welcome was too accurate and effective. It didn't seem like a random gossip. If someone had really sold them out, then it would be troublesome. The people they had brought with them were right beside them. They asked questions as they walked, gradually interrogating them. The first thing they did was state that there wasn't any responsibility for this matter. They just needed to figure out if it was intentional or not. The players understood and told the truth. In the end, there were quite a few people who had gossiped with their friends. If they continued to investigate, there would be even more people involved. Everyone felt a headache coming on. Then, Experienced Man suddenly thought of something. No, that's not right. What's wrong? The other VIPs asked. If it was a problem with our people, then why weren't we ambushed, but the 6 of them? Even though we have a unified goal, we haven't formed a whole. If our people leaked the news, then it was our group that was exposed. It had nothing to do with the other 30 groups. So, if there's a problem, then it's the 6 groups that have a problem, Experienced Man said. According to what you said, even the 6 groups have nothing to do with each other, so there should be a problem with each of them, Experienced Man said. There's also Qianli drunk. How do you explain that? Arrow Seizing the World, who was the first to notice Qianli drunk, said. How did Qianli drunk appear there? Do you have any recollection of that? Experienced man asked. Arrow seizing the world tried hard to remember. I think he just casually walked over. It wasn't just casually. Experienced man shook his head and looked at one of the 8 people. If I'm not wrong, Qianli drunk came with Encore's people. What do you mean? Encore's expression changed, showing signs of anger. I'm not questioning you. What I mean is, your team is the same as the 6 teams that were ambushed. Their whereabouts were exposed. That's why Qianli had his eyes on you when he was drunk. Then he found the place where we met. That's strange. Coincidentally, none of my brothers have mouths. How did the news leak out? Once again clearly wasn't in a good mood. As he spoke, he subtly mocked the fact that there were gossipers in the other teams. Perhaps this means that there's something wrong with your people. And because there's something wrong with them, they'll pretend that they didn't say anything in order to rid themselves of suspicion, right? Sword Adjudicator said. Bullshit. What did you say? Another burst of anger. Fuck, who are you cursing? None of these big shots were easy to deal with. Another round of filthy words enraged Sword Adjudicator, and he immediately glared at them. Quiet down, quiet down. First Low Temperature quickly stopped the 2 who were about to fight. We don't mean to suspect anyone. Then what do you mean? Once again Low Temperature was still angry. Think about it, we're from 31 different main cities, and each city can be said to have randomly selected about 20 people. Among these people, 7 of the city's people will spread the news, and it's very heaven-defying. Is this possible? How could an extraordinary force do something like that? First Low Temperature said. Then what's going on? Sword Adjudicator asked. We still have to find the problem from these 7 families. Although the 7 of you don't know each other and have nothing to do with each other, in this operation, the 7 of you must have made the same mistake, and the very heaven-defying person seized this mistake and caught the 7 of you, First Low Temperature said. That's right. Once again Low Temperature nodded. I'll have to trouble First Low Temperature. Talk to your 6 brothers and see if you've done anything similar. Damn it, I really can't think of any problems, once again Low Temperature mumbled, but he still went to talk to the leaders of the 6 teams. The 6 brothers who had returned to their hometown were still angry at this time. They, who had been ambushed, suspected that the news had been leaked. They organized their people to get revenge and also dealt with this matter. From the degree of the ambush, the other side was well prepared and had a good estimate of their strength. This kind of spy could only be found among their own people. After all, the other 30 people, and even the employer behind the scenes, Ying Qi, couldn't possibly know where they would go or how many people there would be. Those who would do this were all their best friends. Now that they suddenly realized that there might be a problem with one of them, it was quite a painful thing. The 6 of them were also at a loss. Once again Low Temperature started to contact them one by one. He sent a message to the 6 of them, telling them the conclusion of their discussion. The 6 of them were all angry and didn't consider the problem very carefully. When they heard the analysis, they immediately felt that it was reasonable. Extraordinary Defying had no reason to have such a large force. Common points. How about this, we'll make a detailed list of everything we've done after receiving this mission. Then, we'll compare them and we should be able to find common points. Once again Low Temperature wasn't a brainless person, he had his own ideas. Okay, let's do that. One of them nodded. Although this matter was a bit troublesome, they knew that it was very important. If they didn't find this loophole, it was very likely that they would be used again and again by their opponents. While the big shots were discussing this problem, the extraordinary people weren't idle either. Han family young master had already ordered the guild members to search for a group of 100 or more people in Cloud City. This group of people was really eye-catching, they didn't even need to search the streets themselves. Everyone received this order and immediately sent a message to all their friends, asking if they saw such a large group of people on the streets. In less than 5 seconds, the movements of the big shots were exposed countless times. Different people, at different places, noticed their group. In the end, they were reported one by one. Brother, you got these locations and marked them on the map. The routes of the big shots were almost connected. They're currently here. Brother, you tapped on the map. From the direction they're moving in, they aren't going to the revival point. Han family young master said. Why are they going to the revival point? Brother, you asked. With their current numbers, they should know that they aren't our opponents, so they need to wait for new reinforcements. Going offline is obviously the safest method. Even if they didn't go offline, they shouldn't have gathered in such a large group. Isn't exposing themselves so obviously asking to be killed? So I'm sure that their reinforcements will be here soon. They're on the way to meet up. Then why don't they split up? Wouldn't they not be exposed that way? Brother, you said. They're probably afraid of being ambushed. Han family young master laughed. Originally, they were in the dark and we were in the light, but now the tables have turned. Then what do we do next? Do you even need to ask? Once they block us, we'll just kill them. Yun Zhongmu knew that these people were definitely sent by Ying Qi, so he was especially spirited. Everyone's numbers are about the same. Even if we can surround them, we'll definitely suffer losses if we fight them head-on. Let's just have Qianli bring some people with speed to harass them. Han family young master said. Let's just directly kill them. We'll wipe them all out in one go. Yun Zhongmu said. If we wipe them out this time, what about the next time? What about the next time? Han family young master said, if one of us loses a level, we'll lose a portion of our strength. Even if Ying Qi wipes out this group, he can still find experts from all over the world. How many rounds can we last with your method of fighting? Motherfucker, is this bastard trying to play us to death? Yun Zhongmu cursed. Hee, his thinking is too simple. Han family young master laughed. I'm going to go find Qianli. Sword Demon stood up. He had always been a guild leader who liked to lead by example. He was obviously a speed class, so this time, when most people could rest, Sword Demon was prepared to participate. I'm going too. Yutian Shinming took out his bow from his pocket and slung it over his shoulder. Carrying 3 bows like this was actually quite troublesome, but ever since this guy realized that this appearance was very eye-catching, he never got tired of it. He always walked like this on the streets, and as soon as there was no one around, he would immediately put them in his pocket. Of course I can't just sit around. Yun Zhongmu laughed. Go, whoever wants to go can go. Han family young master didn't say anything else. These experts were worth worrying about. Tell us their location at any time. Sword Demon said and then left. At the same time, he sent a message in the guild, calling for people with speed. The people from the 10 Guild Alliance all responded that they wanted to participate. Yun Zhongmu immediately cursed, motherfucker, can't you read? We need speed. Do you know what speed is? Zhu Xian, you grandson, there's nothing you can't do. Get away from me. Sword Demon called for people on his end, and then contacted Gu Fei. Gu Fei was busy clearing his PK points, but the results weren't ideal. Firstly, there was a big battle in Cloud City, and too many people had dropped levels. Everyone was busy recovering their levels, so who would dare to PK? Secondly, they were intimidated by Gu Fei, the godly arrester. Especially after his wanted license was exposed, everyone was even more worried. Although they couldn't be soft when it was time to PK, everyone would still ask if 1000 Miles Drunk was online after PK. If he was online, they would turn themselves in. Every PK point would cost them an hour. Otherwise, if they were caught by 1000 Miles Drunk, they would have to pay double. At this time, Gu Fei was online, so the atmosphere in Cloud City was very good. The PK rate plummeted, and the suicide rate rose. Gu Fei went into the wanted mission office and scanned. The number of missions made him depressed. Fortunately, he could barely clear 29 PK points. As a result, when he looked for targets, 8 out of 10 of them were very overpowered. Of course, there were a lot of people with PK points from the ambush just now. Therefore, Gu Fei was really depressed. Sword Demon and the others had finished their meeting and were ready for the next step. Gu Fei's PK points had only been cleared by 9 points. This was the worst record he had ever seen since he got the wanted emblem and upgraded his wanted license. The players in Cloud City had already bowed to the devil and didn't dare to act rashly again. At this time, the dungeon problem had been solved, and the cross-city search function that was temporarily given to him had been taken back. Gu Fei couldn't clear his PK points in Cloud City, so he was preparing to take the teleport scroll to other main cities to try his luck. Okay, hurry up. Sword Demon listened to the whole story and responded. Sigh, morals are degenerating day by day. Why doesn't anyone PK anymore? Gu Fei sighed and flew to Cloud City's neighbor, Moonlit City. In his impression, that was a paradise for PK and the most popular market for wanted missions. Moonlit City didn't disappoint Gu Fei. Although Yun Zhongmu and the others had left, the atmosphere was still the same. There were many missions and people in the wanted mission office. Gu Fei's name in Moonlit City was second only to that of Cloud City. When he entered the mission office, there were actually people who could recognize him. The players of Moonlit City who advocated PK were naturally very respectful to the PK King. They grandly opened up a path that led directly to the mission release window. Clear PK points, clear PK points. Gu Fei greeted everyone. He was a very polite person. When others treated him like this, he naturally had to be polite. Boss Qianli, how many PK points do you have? Someone asked. It's already 9 p.m. There's only 20 points left. Gu Fei said. Everyone worshipped him to death. He was worthy of being called the king. The world leaderboard used to be 29, but now he was 20. As expected of someone who had always been at the top. Not only were there many missions, but his PK points were also very satisfactory to Gu Fei. He quickly went to the front row and greeted everyone. He patted his coat of arms and flew off. After teleporting, he checked his coordinates. He wasn't too far from his destination. Gu Fei looked in the right direction and quickly rushed over. After rushing and rushing, he finally felt depressed again. Today was really an unlucky day. Gu Fei thought this as he walked forward. When the people who came over saw Gu Fei, they were very surprised and quickly came over to greet him. Why are you here? The woman with the wanted mission number asked. There's something. Gu Fei said. What is it? Women were naturally gossipy. I say, aren't you here to travel? Don't cause trouble for the people of Moonlit City. Gu Fei said. Trouble? What kind of trouble? 8 PK points. How many people did you kill? Gu Fei sighed. Are you retarded? 8 PK points is obviously killing 8 people. The woman looked at Gu Fei with disdain. In the end, she was startled and angry. Fuck, you took a mission, right? You dare to come here and put me on the wanted list. Gu Fei didn't explain. He patted his coat of arms and was ready to fly to his next target. In the white light, he waved at the girls. It could be considered a greeting and a farewell. Fuck, he runs fast. Slender Waist Dance caught up in a few steps, but Gu Fei had already disappeared. Although she couldn't catch up to him, she could always catch up to the news. Slender Waist Dance chased after him and continued to gossip. Why did you come to Moonlit City? To PK, Gu Fei said. There's no PK in Cloud City. Slender Waist Dance asked. No, there's really no PK. When this was brought up, Gu Fei started to cry. He felt like he should move to Moonlit City. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to PK if he kept traveling. Who did you PK with this time? Slender Waist Dance asked. The girls from Amethyst left when 5 knights contacted the guilds in Cloud City. At that time, they were afraid that they would be tied down by Gu Fei. Although they weren't there, they still cared about the situation. They would ask about it from time to time, so they had a basic understanding of the situation. After that, they didn't even need to ask about it. There were all kinds of gossip on the forums. It's probably someone that Ying Qi sent. Gu Fei said. There's no end to it. I'm sick of hearing it. Slender Waist Dance said. If we're done, who should we PK with? Gu Fei said. That makes sense. Then I'll go with you. Slender Waist Dance suggested. With so many things going on, Amethyst had been hiding in Moonlit City. That was because she knew her own limits. She knew that they wouldn't be able to help much, and might even be a burden. However, Slender Waist Dance was an exception. She was also a very strong person. Sure. Gu Fei didn't mind. I'll come back after I clear my PK points. You can report to Sword Demon first. I'll do it too. Slender Waist Dance said. I've already taken the first few spots on the leaderboard. Don't steal them. Gu Fei said cautiously. Fuck, I've taken the first spot too. Slender Waist Dance yelled. The first spot she mentioned was actually second on Gu Fei's leaderboard because she was the first spot on Gu Fei's leaderboard. Ayo, that's too bad. Gu Fei said. Slender Waist Dance opened the quest tab. As expected, she failed. Fuck, why are you so fast? Slender Waist Dance said. I hope you didn't take the next one. Gu Fei said. Are you trying to show off? Slender Waist Dance said angrily. What? It's not like I have that stupid license. How can I take two at once? Slender Waist Dance said. So that's how it is. Gu Fei said. What do you mean that's how it is? I've taken the first few spots on the leaderboard. You can take the ones after. Gu Fei said. Slender Waist Dance was helpless. She knew that she wouldn't be able to compete with Gu Fei. People were meant for wanted quests. No matter how luxurious her equipment was, she didn't have that function. In the end, when Gu Fei cleared his 20 PK points, Slender Waist Dance was still 3 points short. She was so angry that she wanted to strangle Gu Fei. I'm going back first. I'll contact you later. Gu Fei said. Just you wait. Slender Waist Dance clenched her teeth. Gu Fei teleported to the Wanted Quests office in Moonlit Night City and flew back to Cloud City. Sword Demon and the others had already gathered more than 10 people. There were archers and assassins. They were just waiting for Gu Fei to arrive and prepare to attack those guys. Where? Gu Fei immediately asked Sword Demon as soon as he landed. Sword Demon reported the coordinates and Gu Fei ran. On the VIP side, after comparing and studying the list of the 6 comrades who sacrificed themselves, they finally found out. They bought scrolls from Cloud Ting Studio. They went through many ways to find scrolls, but in the end, they all bought scrolls from Cloud Ting Studio. This was a detail that they were very consistent in their actions. So that's how it is. After informing everyone of this result, everyone immediately came to a realization. This problem was originally feared that you wouldn't think of it. As long as you thought of it, everything else would be easily solved. Fortunately, we discovered it in time, the weather-beaten man said thoughtfully. Chapter 888. Yun Teng. Isn't Yun Teng the company that poached all the people from Eagle Studio a few days ago? First Hypothermia suddenly said after thinking about it. Originally, the players wouldn't care about these things in the studio, but this change was too big. The website media reported this as a big event in the game, so the players more or less knew about it. Fuck, that's not very nice. Once again, he expressed his anger. He didn't think that he would be tricked like this. This kind of feeling was really unpleasant. We seem to have gotten involved in something big. First Hypothermia said. What, are you scared? Once again, he wanted to find someone to fight. Scared? What's so scary about a stupid game? It's just that when the situation is complicated, sometimes it's not something that can be solved by fighting and killing. First Hypothermia said. But at least what we have to do is fight and kill, said the weather-beaten man. You have an idea? Beat them at their own game. Experienced person smiled. Just like when he took the initiative to PK with Qianli, he also smiled confidently. Comrades, I'm back. On the other side, Gu Fei had already found Sword Demon and the others and successfully met up with them. Where are the opponents? Gu Fei, who had cleared his PK points, was full of energy. On the street ahead. We're fast, so there's no need to chase too closely. Right now, everyone is discussing how to harass them. Sword Demon said. Surround them? Gu Fei asked. Their numbers are at least 10 times ours. Sword Demon said. Then what are you going to do? Gu Fei asked. First, the archers will attack from a distance and test their reactions. Sword Demon said. Comrades, it's time to show off. Yutian Shinming shouted. He looked like the leader of the archers. Of course, he was very overpowered. When it came to archers, he was indeed the number one figure. Oh oh. The archers echoed Yutian Shinming. Follow me. Yutian Shinming knocked an arrow on his bow and rushed forward in CS mode. Go go go. The others didn't fall behind, each one more CS than the other. Thieves, go into stealth and wait for an opportunity. The sword spectre called out. It seemed that they had already reached an agreement before Gu Fei arrived, and the two professions were prepared to work together. What about me? Gu Fei saw that everyone was about to disperse. Whatever. Sword Demon patted Gu Fei. The big shots had just met up with a new big shot. At this time, they contacted the next big shot and were preparing to go to the next place. Suddenly, they heard a whistling sound in the air. Of course, the experienced people immediately determined that this was an attack from an archer, but they did not seem to be too flustered. Along the way, they discussed many issues in detail. One of them was to choose the person in charge of commanding. He was originally the captain, and his performance was more active and experienced. In the end, he was elected to be the commander. Over there. Sword Adjudicator was also an expert archer. He was able to determine the direction of the sound and reported to their commander. Respond. Observe the situation first, Experienced Frost said in a low voice. There's nothing to respond to. Glacial Level 1 was now the leader of the priests. He sighed. Experienced Frost was startled. It's a concentrated attack, Glacial Level 1 explained. The attack came from behind them and was aimed at one player. Although the player heard the sound and dodged, he couldn't avoid it completely. He was instantly turned into a white light. The heavy warriors had already moved in this direction to provide cover. However, the archers who attacked were nowhere to be seen. There are more than 10 of them, one of the big shots said. The one who had just been killed was his subordinate. Through the health defense of his subordinates, he could determine the attack power of the enemy and estimate the number of people. We came from that direction. The terrain there is simple and there's nothing to hide. They probably rushed out from that intersection and shot the arrows. Then they dodged back in. Glacial Level 1 pointed at the intersection in front of them. That's a small alley. Even if there are more people hiding there, they won't be able to form an effective pincer attack. Once again, this guy had a good memory. Not only could he remember people, but he could also remember the places he had walked and the things he had seen for a long time. Although the commander was experienced, the big shots also played their strengths and provided information to Experienced Frost as much as possible for him to make a decision. Danger could easily cause people to stick together. At this time, these unruly characters in each city had completely relied on each other. Go! Experienced Frost waved his hand and commanded everyone to pounce forward. Team 1 to 4 on the left, Team 5 to 8 on the right. Experienced Frost nodded. In order to make it easier to command, the teams of the important figures were numbered with numbers. The newly received team naturally became the 9th team. It seemed that he still didn't understand the current situation and was somewhat absent-minded. In the end, he instructed him, "You stay in the middle and provide support." "Okay." The new team responded. The team moved forward quickly. The heavy warriors guarded the front while the archers and mages were ready to attack at any time. At this time, a head popped out of the alley and shouted, "Fuck, they're coming." "Really? Retreat." Yutian Shinming heard this and immediately led his people to retreat. However, they didn't go through the alley. They actually jumped onto the street and retreated in front of these people. The archers and mages didn't need to be ordered to attack. However, Yutian Shinming's people were very fast and they were also prepared for any possible attacks. They ran around in a crooked manner and not a single one of them was hit. A speed player immediately jumped out and wanted to give chase, but experienced Frost shouted, "Don't chase." "Yes, they're running too obviously." "It's definitely a trap," Low Temperature said. "The intersection ahead is very open. They can completely spread out their formation and surround us," Repeated Time said. They're underestimating our judgment too much," Experienced Frost sneered. "What do we do now?" Sword Adjudicator almost led his people to give chase. Most expert players liked to think that they were the best in their class and couldn't bear to see their own kind perform in front of them. Continue to the rendezvous point. However, be careful behind you. Pay attention to the crossroads and street corners. They've already caught up to us and can attack us at any time, Experienced Frost said. It seems like they're already here. Sword Adjudicator looked behind him. After Yutian Shinming's archers ran out of their attack range and saw that no one was chasing them, they immediately stopped and turned around to attack again. They've already been discovered by us. What can they do with so few people? Heavy armor protect, priest supply, archers counterattack, team continue to advance, Experienced Frost said. His arrangement was very effective. Yutian Shinming wanted to focus fire again, but against an opponent who was prepared, it was no longer effective. With the shield of the heavy warriors and the recovery of the priests, it was very difficult for the target to be killed by a simple focus fire. The enemy archers hid behind the shield and began to counterattack. Without any cover, Yutian Shinming and the others were flustered and hurriedly retreated from the attack range. The other side didn't chase after them. They only guarded against possible attacks and continued to advance. Sword Demon, do you see it? Yutian Shinming sent a message to Sword Demon. I see it. Sword Demon led his people in stealth and watched Yutian Shinming's harassment throughout. Whether it was in terms of destroying the opponent's morale or delaying the opponent, it didn't have any effect. The other side calmly and effectively responded, easily resolving the harassment of Yutian Shinming's team. Their final result was killing one person in one shot at the beginning, but in a team battle of this scale, this was nothing at all unless they directly killed the other side's boss. They won't fall for it. Yutian Shinming sighed. He and Sword Demon also had a little conspiracy. They wanted to provoke the opponent to chase them. Only agility professions could keep up with the archer's speed. Yutian Shinming wanted to bring some people into Sword Demon's stealth circle. In the end, the opponent didn't fall for it at all. If they couldn't lure the opponent out, then Sword Demon's thief team wouldn't be able to play any role. They couldn't get close to harass them. The opponent was also a master, and their combat quality wasn't low. If they got close to harass them, it was very likely that they wouldn't be able to come back. Even the archer team led by Yutian Shinming didn't dare to get too close. They basically kept to the baseline of the archer's shooting range. I'll follow them like this first and create some psychological pressure for them. Yutian Shinming said. He led the archers under his flag and maintained a distance of 60 meters behind the opponent's team. From time to time, he would shoot some arrows. Damn, it's so annoying. There were still some big shots who were annoyed by such a tale. Hee, ignore them. Just pretend they don't exist, said experienced man. Old man, shoot arrows, someone said. Shooting arrows meant that they had to be on guard all the time and couldn't relax their vigilance at all times. They won't be able to play for long. Experienced man laughed. That's true. The person who discussed this topic with experienced man also laughed. Yutian Shinming followed from afar and shot a few arrows from time to time. They didn't cause any damage to the opponent at all. Whether or not it caused any psychological effects, it couldn't be seen. At least on the surface, the opponent seemed to be very patient. After a long time without any results, Yutian Shinming became a little anxious. He wasn't a very calm person. Sword Demon, where are you? Yutian Shinming called Sword Demon. Behind you guys. I can't keep up with stealth. We'll take a detour and chase after them. Even though the other party was moving as a group and had a lot of movement speed, Thieves' movement speed was greatly reduced after entering stealth. They definitely wouldn't be able to keep up if they stayed in stealth for too long. Sword Ghostblade and the others were eventually left in the dust. They had no choice but to cancel stealth and take a detour to catch up. Oh, got it. What's your next step? Asked Yutian Shinming. I want to ambush them at close range. Sword Demon said. Can you do it? Don't worry. Sword Demon's confidence came from fog ambush. It was proven that this skill couldn't be dealt with by any player at the moment, with the exception of a few overpowered players. Okay, when you ambush them, we'll take advantage of the situation and rob them. Which direction are you planning to go? Asked Yutian Shinming. Straight ahead. Good, you've got guts. Yutian Shinming was praising him when he suddenly heard someone behind him cry out, "Io!" Yutian Shinming's heart tightened. He wasn't old, but he had a lot of experience. This kid didn't look or ask. He first moved himself, and when he looked back, he saw that he was surrounded by thieves. They had actually stepped into the opponent's stealth ambush. Fuck, despicable. Yutian Shinming disregarded everything and looked down on them. He dodged the backstab behind him and turned around to release a homing arrow. In this kind of chaotic battle, it was easy for an archer to accidentally injure his own people, so he could only use a homing arrow that was completely accurate. But who would care about the damage of a homing arrow? The assassin that was staring at Yutian Shinming didn't care about the arrow at all. He didn't want to give up the rare opportunity to get close to the archer, so he took the damage and rushed forward. What else could Yutian Shinming do? He could only turn around and run. He didn't think that he would be the one to fall into the trap that they had set up. The opponent seemed to ignore his harassment, but in fact, they had secretly set up an ambush. These thieves had probably sneaked out from their team one by one. Otherwise, there was no way he wouldn't have noticed when so many people disappeared. Retreat, retreat, roared Yutian Shinming. His speed was fast, and his reaction wasn't slow either. He had already escaped from the ambush. However, the others weren't so lucky. 2 people were killed on the spot in the first wave. They wanted to escape like Yutian Shinming, but they were half a beat too late and were immediately intercepted. A thief couldn't compare to an archer in long-distance attacks, but in a short-distance charge, a thief's speed after activating swift movement was much faster than an archer's. Yutian Shinming stopped and roared. The assassin that ambushed him had already used swift movement to rush over. Yutian Shinming could only turn around and dodge. After all, his equipment was better than most players and even experts. Many thieves might not be able to run as fast as him even if they used swift movement. Who knew that as soon as the person in front of him used stealth, Yutian Shinming would hear footsteps approaching. When he turned around, the distance between them had already closed by a large margin. He immediately knew that the person attacking him wasn't an ordinary person, but an expert. Fuck. Yutian Shinming wasn't someone who would admit defeat so easily. When he saw a street in front of him, he immediately turned around and stopped in his tracks. He knew that with swift movement's duration, he would definitely be caught by the opponent, so he simply stopped and prepared for an ambush. Yutian Shinming turned the corner and crouched down. Just as he knocked an arrow on the bowstring, the opponent had already caught up with him. "Hey, look here." Yutian Shinming knocked his bow. When the arrow was less than 2 meters away from the opponent's head, he loosened his hand and released the arrow. Fuck. The person chasing after him clearly didn't expect Yutian Shinming to actually crouch down and ambush him. With less than 2 meters of distance, how could he dodge Yutian Shinming's snipe? The arrow pierced his head and sent him flying. Die. Yutian Shinming fired 2 consecutive arrows. Before the opponent could even land on the ground, another 2 arrows had already landed on his body. Fuck, you're still not dead. Yutian Shinming angrily rushed forward and stomped on the opponent's body. He then shot another arrow at the person's head. Fuck, how much defense do you have? Seeing that the opponent was still alive, Yutian Shinming asked as he reloaded his arrows. The assassin's lungs were about to explode. He was also a big shot. When had he ever thought of being stepped on by a little brat and used as a target? Let's see if you'll die or not. Just as Yutian Shinming was about to fire another arrow, a "shio" sound suddenly came from beside him. It sounded like an arrow, but it wasn't. Yutian Shinming didn't dare to be careless. He jumped to the side and dodged. Only then did he see a few more thieves chasing after him. The attack just now was from someone throwing a dagger at him. Yutian Shinming was extremely regretful. How much damage could this kind of attack do? If he had known earlier, he would have taken this attack and killed that guy. After jumping to the side, that person rolled on the ground towards his companions. Yutian Shinming shot another arrow. That person rolled and dodged. Although he was in a sorry state, it seemed like he wouldn't die. Kill this brat. That person rolled to the side of his companions and got up with a flip. His face was covered in dirt as he shouted loudly. TCH. Yutian Shinming gave him the middle finger and turned to run. He didn't believe that all of the opponents were experts and could easily catch up to him. However, just as he turned to run, he saw that the opponents had already surrounded him. A few thieves had surrounded him. There was no way out. Brat, I'll let you be arrogant. That assassin finally won the moment to be proud. Sigh, when a tiger falls to the plains, he'll be bitten by a dog. Yutian Shinming sighed and looked towards the ambush circle. Half of the archers on his side had died. The other half had finally rushed out of the ambush circle, but there were still thieves chasing behind them. At this moment, they couldn't even take care of themselves. Obviously, they couldn't come and save him. Little friend, can you hold on? Yutian Shinming was helpless. Suddenly, he heard a voice that made him wild with joy. Fuck, so late. His heart was wild with joy, but his mouth was complaining. I'm lost. The other party said. Yutian Shinming was so angry that he didn't know what to say. It was really inconvenient. No matter what he scolded, it seemed like he would be scolded. All the assassins turned around to look at this person who had come halfway and immediately shivered. Qianli is drunk. The other party's voice was filled with despair. Yutian Shinming was very jealous. He was also an expert. Why couldn't anyone recognize him? Looking at this person's appearance, his opponent's reaction and trembling. Qianli is drunk is here. The big shot leading the team sent a message to the other bosses. His tone was like saying that the end of the world had arrived. Fuck, how is that possible? He washed away 29 PK points so quickly. Everyone was surprised. If they let them know that this was still a very slow time for Gu Fei, who knew how they would feel. He doesn't have to clean up before he comes again. Someone said. Retreat. When Weathered Frost sent this message, the team sent a system message at the same time. Player Crossroads has left the team's range and has automatically left the team. Crossroads, one of the 31 big shots, was the 15th master on the thieves' leaderboard a second ago. In the end, he took a sword from Gu Fei and died. Gu Fei didn't even know that he was a master. Gu Fei's judgment of masters had become simpler and simpler. Those who could survive his double flame flash were the so-called masters in the game. Crossroads, who had been shot several arrows by Yutian Shinming, was deprived of the opportunity to be judged as a master by Gu Fei. Butterfly Knot, Chapter 888, What Great Fortune. Chapter 889. Just as the perfect ambush was about to come to an end, Qianli's drunken rampage suddenly overturned everything. The big shots didn't even have the strength to be angry. They could only feel gloomy. Of course, it was fine for Qianli to appear when he was drunk, but he didn't give them a chance after appearing. It was too frustrating. The other side had just sent news of Qianli's drunken rampage when he was wiped out. Did he have to act so quickly? It was easy to get everyone to react. Weathered Thru's remaining messages could no longer be sent. At this moment, Crossroads Road, who had been killed and returned to the city, was roaring at him. Of course, he wasn't scolding Weathered Thru, but he was extremely dissatisfied with Qianli's drunken rampage. How could there be such a powerful person? He killed himself with just a raise of his hand. Even if he only had a sliver of health left at the time. However, Crossroads Road couldn't see any chance of victory from that one move. That kind of despair made him disheartened even more about this game. With such a powerful person around, would there still be a day for them to make a name for themselves? Do we still need to send reinforcements? Foreordained Thru asked Weathered Thru in a mournful tone. If they needed reinforcements, he would naturally be the fastest to lead the archers over. However, with Qianli's drunken rampage and the fact that they were all thieves with low health, there was no point in sending reinforcements. Let's go help them. There should be some who can escape, Weathered Thru said. Of course, there would be some who could escape. Gu Fei didn't know how to split himself into two. As soon as the thieves saw him appear, they all scattered. Each person walked down a street. In the end, Gu Fei only managed to deal with the few people surrounding Yutian Shinming. Those who were about to come over all turned around and ran. Gu Fei couldn't do anything about it either. Half of them died, Yutian Shinming said with a pained heart. It was precisely because he didn't want any casualties to occur that he sent people with speed professions like them to harass them. He hoped that they could rely on their speed to ensure their own safety. Who would have thought that they would fall into such a trap? Yutian Shinming was filled with regret. He should have been more careful and not rushed in. What about the other half? In Gu Fei's eyes, Yutian Shinming was the only archer left. I'll contact them. They should be able to escape. Yutian Shinming was not very confident when he said this. However, he knew that not every player chasing after him was as strong as he was. If he only wanted to escape, it should not be a problem as long as he escaped the encirclement. Sure enough, those who managed to break out of the encirclement survived. Yutian Shinming then informed the Sword Demon of this news. The Sword Demon was also distressed. We were too careless. The guild immediately knew about this matter. Han family young master's evaluation was only one word, idiot. No one knew who he was referring to. Although Gu Fei had appeared in the end, in a sense, he had only saved Yutian Shinming. For them, ensuring that their side's strength was not damaged was more important than eliminating the enemy's experts. This was because Han family young master had already said that the number of experts that the enemy could send out was a bottomless pit. However, if they lost a level, they would lose a portion of their strength. And now, the archers that Yutian Shinming had brought out were considered good in the guild, but half of them had been lost. One could imagine how depressed Yutian Shinming was. Which way did they go? Gu Fei asked Yutian Shinming. That way. When the ambush appeared, the enemy's team was not far in front of them. Although they had disappeared, Yutian Shinming had observed their movements. Chase! Gu Fei rushed out. Yutian Shinming had no choice but to quickly follow. There was also a fleeing thief on this path. When he saw the two people chasing after him, he hurriedly called for help from the rest of his group. How many people? Experienced veteran asked. 2, Qianli drunk and the archer he saved. The other side reported. Hold on. Take them for a ride. As soon as he finished speaking, he gathered everyone. This is an opportunity. Make good use of it. Let's ambush 1,000 Miles drunk. Killing him is as easy as killing 100 people. But we're not familiar with the terrain. We don't know where to set up an ambush. Relying on thief stealth is clearly not enough to ambush him. Low Temperature said. Again, do you have any impressions of the places we've passed? Experienced veteran asked. Again, he had already seen through this person's characteristics. He couldn't just think of it as having a good memory. In fact, this person was good at observation. He would pay attention to everything he saw. That was why he had a photographic memory. Yes. Not far from here, there's a narrow alley. The houses on both sides aren't tall. Maybe we can hide on the houses and wait for Qianli drunk to be brought into the alley. Then we can jump down from both sides and trap him in the middle. That way, he won't be able to escape. Again, he had an idea. Do you know how to get there? Experienced veteran asked. Won't it be easy to bump into him if we go back the way we came? I'll bring some people to go around from the back. We're going to the houses anyway. Again said. Alright, Team 5, 7 and 8 will go with you. Pay attention to his teleportation skill. I estimate that his movement distance should be between 6 to 8 meters. It can't be more than 8 meters. You have to be careful. Experienced veteran said. He didn't dare neglect Qianli drunk. He immediately sent out half of his team. Okay. Again nodded. The other 3 teams also gathered. Team 7 was originally Crossroads Road's men. He led the thief out, but in the end, he sacrificed himself and returned to the city. At this moment, his subordinates were at a loss. Now that their boss wasn't here, why were they still following him? However, they had an agreement beforehand. They had to listen to experienced veterans' commands. In the midst of their confusion, Team 7 sent a message to Crossroads Road. Crossroads Road clenched his teeth and replied, kill him. If there's a chance, kill him. I'll be back immediately. The 4 teams hurriedly set off. Again looked at the direction and led his men into a small alley by the side of the road. The fleeing thief complained bitterly, Boss, where am I taking them? They're chasing us so closely. That archer keeps shooting arrows. We've set up an ambush. You take them too. Experienced veteran realized that he couldn't describe it. He didn't even know the coordinates. He hurriedly asked again, and again to observe and memorize. He wouldn't be able to memorize all the coordinates, so he could only reply, wait a moment, take them in circles. I'll give you the coordinates later. Experienced veteran could only reply that pitiful thief. The thief wanted to cry but had no tears. He could only do as he was told. When he saw an intersection, he turned around and didn't dare to look back. He focused on running for his life. However, as he ran, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. The archer who was chasing behind him usually shot an arrow every few steps. Why wasn't there any movement now? Why was he so focused on chasing? The thief looked back as he ran. He was immediately stunned. There was no one behind him. He was already 100 meters into the street. The distance between him and the archer was originally around 50 meters. Now, there was no trace of them. Could it be that I'm too fast and have shaken them off? The thief casually thought about it and rejected the idea. This was a game. Speed was a fixed number. He should have an absolute understanding of how fast he was. If he could really shake off the 2 of them, he wouldn't have been so afraid to run. Report, they're gone. The thief confirmed again. There weren't many people on this street. The two of them were indeed gone. Thus, he reported to his superior. What do you mean they're gone? Experienced veteran asked. I turned into a street. They don't seem to be chasing us. They're not chasing us. Experienced veteran looked at the crowd in confusion. They seem to have guessed our plan. Damn, they're really cunning. Then let's call them back again. Arrow decides the world said. Experienced veteran nodded. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the team. Someone shouted, Qianli's drunk. Qianli's drunk is coming. Weather-beaten Frost was shocked, and he turned around to look with the other important figures. Indeed, 1,000 Miles drunk and an archer were chasing after them at high speed. Tears streamed down his cheeks at that moment. He knew that he had misunderstood. More accurately, the thief had misunderstood. How was Qianli's drunk chasing him? He was just a small character. He wasn't even taken seriously by Qianli's drunk. Qianli's drunk was chasing their team. He was chasing their entire team of more than 100 people. Their team had lost 29 people to Qianli's drunk. They had lost more than one team. The newly joined 9th team barely made up for this loss. However, none of the thieves that had just been sent out had returned. For more teams had been killed. At this time, they were even weaker than when they first fought with Qianli's drunk. However, Qianli's drunk just had to arrive at this time. Experienced veteran couldn't blame the thief's information for being wrong. Even if it was him, he would think the same. Their thoughts were temporarily unable to be like Qianli's drunk. Who would chase more than 100 people with just 2 people? Who would even think about such a thing? This time, those who had been through thick and thin finally understood that they couldn't treat 1,000 Miles drunk as a single person. They had to treat him as an opponent who could match their strength. Therefore, they had to think from the perspective of this kind of strength. Would a team of more than 100 players chase after a lone thief? Of course not. Thinking about it this way, it seemed that their way of thinking was connected to Qianli's. However, it seemed that it was a bit too late to connect. Their team had warriors and priests. These people with short legs couldn't compare to the speed of Qianli's drunk. Fight? Previously, more than 100 people were bullied like that. What could half of them do now? But no matter what, they could only try their best. Experienced veteran quickly arranged everyone's positions. However, the unfamiliarity between everyone couldn't be eliminated in such a short period of time. It was just slightly better than the previous chaos. When experienced veteran saw that this last bit of hope didn't seem to be too reliable, his heart was already filled with pessimism. At this time, Qianli's drunk had already rushed over. Their archers didn't seem to be shooting at Qianli's drunk. They all missed. But there was a very direct comparison that was very well presented in front of everyone's eyes. That archer and Qianli's drunk had caught up at the same time. Their speed wasn't any slower than Qianli's drunk. Of course, their archers wouldn't ignore him. And at this time, this archer's advance had already greatly slowed down in order to avoid their attacks. He was stopped at a distance of 50 to 60 meters. In the same situation, even more archers were paying attention to Qianli's drunk. He was so coquettishly taking large strides to catch up. His speed didn't change at all because of the archer's interception. He swayed his body as he ran at high speed, dodging all the incoming arrows. Those slow tracking arrows were knocked away with a casual swing of his sword. In the blink of an eye, Gu Fei was already 30 meters away, which was the attack range of a mage. As Gu Fei chanted, the mages in the array also chanted. Gu Fei teleported away, and all the spells they had cast missed their target. They scattered in all directions, but they didn't see any spells appear where Gu Fei pointed. He added full agility, so his spell casting is slow. He was well read and understood this point. If he took this as a bluff from 1,000 Miles drunk, then he would be making a fool of himself. As a result, everyone obediently scattered. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The weather-beaten faces turned red. Even if they lowered their intelligence, their spells wouldn't be that slow. That Qianli was drunk, he was actually bluffing, he really hadn't released any spells. Drunk, Qianli rushed to the front of the formation. The heavy warrior held his shield, while the berserker, knight, priest, and other classes with a bit of health split into two groups, preparing to surround Qianli in a triangular formation. In the end, they saw Qianli's drunk palm hit the heavy warrior's shield, activating Thunder Palm. The heavy warrior was as steady as a mountain, but he couldn't completely ignore the knockback effect of the skill, and was immediately knocked back. They only had a few dozen people, so how thick could the encirclement be? This immediately opened up a path. Gu Fei stepped in, turned around, and used Flame Flash. The weak mages and archers hiding in the back immediately fell. Hey! Gu Fei glanced at the weather-beaten commander. This was an opponent he had once fought with, and Gu Fei had a good impression of him, so he raised his sword and rushed towards him. He had a good impression of him, but he received this kind of treatment. If the weather-beaten knew this, who knew how he would feel? Weather-beaten obviously wouldn't be caught so easily by Gu Fei. With a teleport, he blended into the warrior's formation. Gu Fei raised his sword and cut down two people. When he saw the priest blocking his path, it was the one who hadn't died after being cut several times. Gu Fei didn't want to waste time on him, so he stepped behind him and rammed his shoulder into him, causing him to stagger and fall to the ground. When a warrior saw Gu Fei's technique, he immediately rushed forward with full confidence. He didn't believe that he would be knocked down by a mage like this. In the end, what greeted him was a slash from Gu Fei's sword. If it weren't for the fact that he was lying on his back and desperately healing himself in level 1 low temperature, he might have already died. Gu Fei saw that this priest was not only tanky, but his recovery was also very amazing. It was really a bit of a torture. In a situation where they were surrounded, they couldn't give Gu Fei too much time to attack while interrupting the priest's recovery. They could only temporarily give up on this target and continue to kill the less tanky players. The fact that the thief who went to ambush couldn't turn back was their greatest blessing. At this time, the archers and mages on the field were being killed and fled. The others wanted to help, but they couldn't keep up with their speed. Whether it was the speed of their feet or the speed of their recovery, they couldn't keep up. Weather-beaten saw that this was simply a repeat of the previous situation, but there was nothing they could do. If this continued, could it be that they could only let Qianli get drunk and kill 29 people before swaggering off? Just as they were gritting their teeth, someone in the team suddenly shouted, "Thief!" They didn't know which city this was, but the content was too general. Half of the people on the field didn't know what was going on. It wasn't until a player was killed by 3 thieves who suddenly appeared out of nowhere that everyone realized there was a thief in stealth nearby. This thief was a player with anti-stealth abilities. At this time, it was already too late. The thieves had already revealed themselves from stealth and launched the first wave of attacks. The opponent's distribution of manpower was extremely accurate and effective. Not a single target didn't survive. The priests couldn't even react in time. One of them was even more valiant. After working together with others to kill one person, he rushed forward like a warrior and actually killed a group of people. The players on the road all had different classes, but all of them were killed in one hit. This kind of damage was even higher than Qianli's drunk. The strength of his explosive power was completely disproportionate to his thin body. One Qianli drunk couldn't even take care of him, and suddenly there was such a tough opponent. Weather-beaten was already on the verge of tears. He knew that he wouldn't be able to make it back in time. How long had they been gone? How long would it take to turn back? Moreover, what could he do even if he came back? Qianli's drunk was clearly an opponent that more than 100 of them couldn't fight head-on. The formation that was already scattered by Qianli's drunk was even more fragmented under the injection of this new force. Weather-beaten looked up at the sky and sighed. There was no other way. In this kind of battle of strength, the weaker side would lose. It was just that simple. Even if there was a strange formation or a wretched commander, this was a team that hadn't even gone through a break-in period. There was no way they could display this kind of strength. Right now, the only thing he should be worried about was whether or not he could survive. Use your scrolls to retreat. Someone shouted. Weather-beaten could tell that it was a level 1 low temperature. These people had come with scrolls, so of course they were also preparing to use scrolls to return. They had already bought the return scrolls this time. No matter how expensive the scrolls were, they couldn't compare to a player's level. The players who had scrolls had already taken out their scrolls and tried their best to meet up with the players who didn't have scrolls and leave together. Obvious intentions would naturally be met with obvious obstructions. Those who were found could only blame themselves for being unlucky. However, Gu Fei's group had fewer people, so they couldn't cover everything. In the end, the other side still successfully activated their scrolls. Be careful, don't get teleported away too. Sword Demon reminded. To interrupt the teleportation, they had to get close and attack. They had to grasp the timing well. If they were a bit late and the teleportation formation activated and matched the quota, they would be teleported together regardless of whether they were in the same team or not. If they teleported away, it might be a situation where the other side had to fight 2-1 or even 3-1. The other side wasn't mediocre, and they didn't have anyone to look out for each other, so it would be troublesome. As the teleportation continued to succeed, the number of people in the field decreased. In the end, when the number of people was almost the same as very unbelievable, they finally couldn't complete the teleportation. The rest of them were wiped out in the end. On very unbelievable's side, a thief had unfortunately died in battle. One person's sacrifice in exchange for such a huge victory was worth it. After all, it was too unrealistic to guarantee 0 casualties. This was a situation where they were outnumbered. Even if Gu Fei could fight 100 people alone, he couldn't split himself into 100. Chapter 890. The few VIPs that arrived at Cloud City first didn't even stay for more than 2 hours before they all left. The teleportation scrolls were naturally the coordinates of their hometowns. Once they returned, the VIPs' teams were completely disbanded. They had to use private messages to comfort each other, which was very displeasing. Weathered Frost quickly described their encounter and sent it to those who hadn't arrived at Cloud City yet. He emphasized on Qianli's insane strength when he was drunk. As for whether the other side would believe him or not, Weathered Frost couldn't be bothered with what they were going to do next. Besides, it wasn't his business. These 31 VIPs were quite harmonious as a whole. They didn't see eye to eye with each other. This was probably because they came from different cities and didn't have much of a competitive relationship. Now that they received Weathered Frost's message, everyone believed it and didn't dare to act rashly. Out of the 31 people who had been in high spirits when they first met, 8 of them had already been killed. The total number of people who had died was close to 200. This bloody fact caused the big shots who had only brought around 20 people to feel a chill run down their spines. No wondering Qi found so many of them. No wondering Qi gave such a high price tag to the 31 of them. It turned out that this person was incredibly hard to deal with. The 31 of them didn't mean to underestimate their opponent. It was just that their opponent was too strong. It was so strong that even Weathered Frost couldn't understand it. Qianli's drunkenness is a hurdle. If we don't take care of him, we won't be able to take him down. Weathered Frost said in the message. The two of them got along quite well. After returning to their respective cities, they contacted each other more than the others. We need to understand this person in more detail. Not just his equipment and skills, but also his fighting habits and whatnot. This person's fighting style is completely different from normal players. The way he moves, the way he attacks, the way he changes his rhythm. Fuck. Is he human? Weathered Frost replied to Weathered Frost. You're right. But we won't be able to get anything from this. We still have to go to Cloud City. Weathered Frost said. This time, we have to keep it a secret. Weathered Frost said. Of course. I'll contact Yongyuan again and see if he has anything more detailed. I think he didn't finish what he wanted to say. Maybe we didn't take it too seriously and affected him. Maybe. I'll get someone to go to Cloud City's forum to see if there's any content about Qianli's drunk. First Low Temperature said. Alright. Due to the fact that they couldn't form teams so far away after returning to their hometowns, they couldn't use the public channel anymore. If they discussed among themselves, they would be like a pile of loose sand. With this painful lesson, how could they still dare to be so indifferent towards Qianli when he was drunk? Therefore, someone suggested that they should first set up an offline discussion group or a voice chat room to discuss things together. This idea received positive responses from everyone. Everyone exchanged their chat numbers and chose someone to set up a discussion group. The players who were on foot were quite depressed. They were still in the middle of nowhere. They couldn't log off just because they wanted to. He could only continue on his way to the main city. The VIPs who were offline had all been invited into the discussion group. Only 6 people were offline, and they were all on foot. Next, let's invite those who have fought with very overpowered to explain the process in detail. The first to speak was the founder of the discussion group, a replica from Rune Mountain City, a berserker ranked 12th on the warrior leaderboard. Weathered Frost's previous message to everyone was rather brief. Now that there was space and time, he naturally gave a detailed explanation, including the strength of Qianli's drunk, as well as the fact that he bought scrolls from the studio, which led to the other party grasping his movements. That's outrageous. Everyone immediately condemned after hearing it. I also think that the studio is being unfair. Damn, Yunteng, right? We'll never buy anything from them again. Someone added. No, I'm saying, how can Qianli be so strong when he's drunk? This is outrageous. Is he a hack? Someone couldn't help but suspect that Gu Fei's display of strength was a manifestation of advanced technology. I don't think so. Weathered Frost wasn't confident either. Cheats were things that normal players could only use, how would they understand the theory behind them? In a new game like the Parallel World, if there was a hack, no one knew what would happen. Why don't we report this to the game company first? One person made nearly 200 people helpless. This isn't an MMORPG. This is an MMORPG. Someone said. I don't think so. Low Temperature One spoke. Qianli's been famous for a long time. The players in Cloud City know his strength better than we do. I'm sure that someone has already reported him in private. If Qianli is fine when he's drunk, that means he's not a hack. Even if he is, it's a hack that the game company can't find out about, so don't bother reporting him. No matter how strong he is, there has to be a limit, right? Drown him in a sea of people. Someone said. Everyone here was a big shot. With a wave of their arm, they could summon hundreds of people. If Qianli was able to wipe out thousands of people when he was drunk, then they would all delete their accounts. That's not realistic, right? Cloud City is so far away, how are we going to get there with so many people? And it's not just going, we still have to go back, right? Who would be able to endure using scrolls like this? Not using scrolls, walking. I think more people can't stand it, someone said. Everyone was silent. They deeply understood the importance of economy in war. No money, they couldn't even buy teleportation scrolls, they couldn't even transport troops, how could they fight a war? What I'm saying is that we should first understand Qianli's strength and see if we can find a way to deal with him. Weathered Frost spoke of his idea and Low Temperature One's idea. In the end, someone else brought up Low Temperature One's idea. This, according to what that brother said, if there was a way, he would have been wiped out by the players in Cloud City, right? Cloud City. That's not the same. It's just a main city, how can there be so many famous players? What they can't do, it doesn't mean we can't do it, Weathered Frost said. Everyone was happy to hear this and immediately accepted Weathered Frost's suggestion, discussing how to dig out the unique characteristics of Drunk Qianli's strength. "Those guys, how's it going?" Matchless Genius asked Eternal in a certain main city. He knew that this was a game, and many things happened very quickly in the game. Even though it had only been a few hours since he met with those guys, he had already heard that they had already begun to take action. The people in Age Workshop were all over the game, and their information network was much stronger than that of normal players. It was just that because of the lack of manpower, Matchless Genius's information network was blocked for a period of time. But now that many main cities had recovered, those in charge who hadn't left were naturally doing well, and those who had left were temporarily selected from the permanent staff to take charge. These matters could be done by contacting the previous director or the previous person in charge of the main city. He was just job hopping, not running away. Did he really disappear without a trace just like that? Matchless Genius had asked about the appointment of personnel, but when it came to information gathering, he left it to his subordinates. At this time, he wanted to hear the progress of the matter from Eternal. "Those guys are calmer," Eternal said. "Why?" "Their first batch of people have already reached Cloud City, and it seems like they've already returned in defeat. But they didn't get riled up, and someone even asked me if I had more detailed information on Qianli's drunk. Now that more than 20 of them are offline, I think they've gone offline to discuss countermeasures," Eternal said. "Is that so? What about Cloud City?" Matchless Genius asked. "We can't get very good information. But it seems like they were prepared, and ambushed us. Drunk Qianli's PK points reached 29, and of the 31 people we found, 8 have already lost their levels," Eternal said. "Those 8 people are still so calm." "We'll need to find out more, but it seems like they've all participated in the offline discussion. The ones that didn't are probably those who are planning to walk to Cloud City, and it's not convenient for them to go offline halfway," Eternal said. "Hee, do you think they're very good opponents?" Matchless Genius asked. "That? Hard to say," Eternal didn't reply. "Alright, keep an eye out." Matchless Genius nodded. In the eyes of outsiders, the Cloud City's first battle might have felt that it was a great victory, but they themselves were very sad about the loss of their archer regiment this time. "I think we shouldn't run around, you go kill them all by yourself," Yutian Shinming said to Gu Fei. "Sigh, if we don't need 29 points, it'll be so much more convenient." Gu Fei sighed. "He's serious." The other people whispered. "How's the investigation of their background?" Han family young master didn't care about this, and asked Brother Yu the question he was most concerned about. "If Eternal wants to find someone to deal with us, then they'll definitely find an expert on the leaderboard. I've been comparing the top 30 rankings of each class for the past few hours, and there's a total of 8 people who disappeared from the leaderboard due to losing levels. I think these 8 people are very likely to be hired by Ying Qi. This is the general situation of these 8 people. They're from 8 main cities, and their levels are all in the top 30. 7 of them are from big guilds, and one of them is a famous mercenary group leader." Brother Yu handed over the information as he gave a simple introduction. "Oh, what about the others?" Han family young master asked. "That'll take some time, and we might not be able to find out just like that. Can anyone who's fought with them describe their characteristics?" Brother Yu looked at Gu Fei, Sword Demon, Yutian Shinming. The 3 looked at each other, and Gu Fei said, "There's a mage, lightning type, and can teleport." "Are you introducing yourself?" Yutian Shinming asked. Gu Fei ignored him. "There's also a skill I haven't seen before, it's called lightning." "Spell?" Gu Fei couldn't remember clearly. It wasn't that his memory wasn't good, but that mages didn't know how to chant for their opponents, but for the system. Everyone wanted to sing a chain of fireballs to the system, and for the opponent to hear a hello. After understanding the system's voice recognition, it took a bit of skill for an experienced mage to be able to hear their chants clearly. It wasn't easy for Gu Fei, and he had to rely on his hearing to catch these 3 words. "Oh, is there anything special about him?" Brother Yu asked as he wrote it down. How brave, he actually dared to challenge me to a duel. Gu Fei said. Then he's already on the death list, right? Brother Yu turned around and flipped through the list. No. Gu Fei said. He didn't die to a duel with you. Everyone was shocked. Gu Fei didn't know what to do. In fact, he had more than one chance to kill the mage, but he just didn't go for it. Is there anything else? It'd be best if it's a skill or equipment. Brother Yu said. No. Gu Fei couldn't remember anything else. Is there anyone else? There's also a priest, he has a lot of health, and his recovery is pretty good. Gu Fei said. There are a lot of priests like that. Brother Yu said. Against Qianli, if he has a lot of health and recovery, I'm afraid there won't be too many. Sword Demon said. That's true. Brother Yu said, then I'll pay attention to the top players among the physical priests. Is there anyone else? Gu Fei didn't say anything and looked at the other two. There's an assassin, he runs really fast, and when he uses swift movement, he's even faster than me. Yutian Shinming also began to introduce, showing that he had also fought against experts. That's fast enough. Brother Yu nodded. This was similar to the priest that Gu Fei introduced. Assassins were fast, and priests had high health. These weren't really characteristics, but with this kind of reference, they suddenly became big characteristics. His defense is also very high, he didn't die even after taking a few of my arrows. Yutian Shinming said. Which one? Gu Fei asked, he didn't remember such a person. The one you killed when you first appeared. Yutian Shinming said. Gu Fei was speechless. Brother Yu silently tore the piece of paper that Yutian Shinming had just said, crumpled it into a ball, and threw it on the ground like trash, waiting for the system to refresh it. What? Yutian Shinming still hadn't reacted. Idiot. Han family young master gave a simple evaluation. The one you mentioned is already dead, if he's an expert, then he's definitely in the list of 8. Gu Fei reminded him. Yutian Shinming suddenly understood. This was the characteristic of a teenager, his intelligence was obviously not mature yet, sometimes he was smart, and sometimes he was stupid. Sword Demon. Brother Yu looked at the last trace of hope. Sword Demon handed over a piece of paper, I've recorded everything I noticed. Brother Yu took a look, and was overjoyed, praising, as expected, Sword Demon is the most reliable. After saying that, he felt a little insecure and quickly added, as reliable as Qianli's strength. Sword Demon wasn't like Gu Fei. He was a character from the player's plane, so his method of determining experts was naturally not as simple and crude as Gu Fei's, and his eyes were indeed sharp. The content of the piece of paper he gave to Brother Yu was simple and to the point, but it was very clear. Brother Yu would definitely find someone much easier with this information than the ones provided by Gu Fei. There's one more thing, Sword Demon said, when we chased after them, the number of the other party was reduced. I think they probably split up half of their forces, and I don't know where the other half went, and there's still no news of them. Yes, yes, yes. Yutian Shinming quickly nodded. He also remembered when Sword Demon mentioned it. The number of the other party was obviously reduced. Even if they split up some thieves to ambush them, it shouldn't be that small. If half of them were gathered together, it would still be very conspicuous. It seems that the other party also realized this, and now they're splitting up. Han family young master said. From the looks of it, apart from a few top experts, most of them are just ordinary experts. Sword Demon said. Everyone understood the meaning of ordinary experts. Most of the members of the big guilds were worthy of this title. However, there weren't many members of the very overpowered guilds with this title. People like Yun Xiang could be considered, and most of them were very common players. The people brought by Yun Zhongmu were valiant, but after going through a great battle, their levels and equipment were all damaged, especially those that had fallen below the 40 mark. They were definitely too embarrassed to call themselves experts. Therefore, even if the other party was scattered, these kinds of ordinary experts would still have the advantage in a one-on-one situation against the very overpowered commoners. Sword Demon immediately sent out a message, telling everyone to be careful. It would be best to work in a team. Just as he sent out this message, a private chat message suddenly came in. Sword Demon opened it and was surprised to see that it was actually from Unsworn Sword. Gu Fei also received the same message. This was already a kind of convention. If you wanted to contact the very overpowered players, you wouldn't just look for the guild leader, but also Gu Fei. This was to express the importance and respect of this super expert. Unsworn Sword is looking for me. Sword Demon said. Oh, he's also looking for me. Gu Fei also said. Looks like he's looking for us. Sword Demon understood. Will it be related to the current situation? Brother, you guessed. We'll know when we meet him. Sword Demon said. Unsworn Sword's message was to chat with them in person. Then let's go. Han Family Young Master said as he stood up. Those who wanted to go went, those who didn't want to go didn't go. Gu Fei didn't want to go. There was still a bunch of PK points to clear. This time, he had to go to Moonlit Night City. Although it was a lot of money, this scroll had to go back and forth. Gu Fei also felt a bit distressed. He was afraid that one day the scrolls would run out and he wouldn't be able to buy them. What should he do then? Poor Thin Waist Dance had just cleared her PK points in Moonlit Night City. She flew back to Cloud City to contact this and that, anxiously asking where the fight was. In the end, when he found out that the fight was over, Gu Fei was going to clear a new round of PK points. He was half dead with anger. Later, when he found out that this fight wasn't over and that it would be continued later, he calmed down. The place where Unsworn Sword and Sword Demon met was a nearby tavern. Beside him were Wind Star and Time Reflected. Surprisingly, Gu Xiaoshang also came. What's the matter? After sitting down, Sword Demon asked. In the end, with him was Han Family Young Master, Gossip Brother Yu. I heard that a group of people came to cause trouble for you guys recently. Unsworn Sword didn't beat around the bush. You heard about it so soon. Sword Demon was surprised. Everyone on the street saw it. Qianli's power is still as strong as before. Why didn't he come? Unsworn Sword said. After his power, of course, he's going to clear PK points. Sword Demon laughed. Yo, that's not easy. The atmosphere in Cloud City is good now. There's almost no one on the wanted list. Unsworn Sword obviously knew about this because their guild even made it a guild rule. Qianli is drunk online, PK must be cautious, after PK, surrender. Butterfly Knot, the first wave has been beaten back. When will the new wave come? Chapter 891. He went to Moonlit Night City to take a bath, Sword Demon replied to Unsworn Sword. Alright, let's end the meaningless small talk and get to the point. Han Family Young Master saw that Unsworn Sword had the intention to continue the topic, so he quickly cut him off. After understanding that Qianli was almost unbeatable when he was drunk, the players in Cloud City cleverly chose to express their goodwill towards him. Unsworn Sword didn't know why he chose this path. He felt that his relationship with Qianli wasn't bad, but he still needed to solidify it. Even if it was just to discuss more about this person. Who would have thought that Han Family Young Master would rudely cut him off like this? Unsworn Sword was very depressed, but he could only endure it. It's like this, Unsworn Sword finally got down to business. If someone comes to cause trouble, Brother Sword Demon should have told us. These players from outside the city are bullying our Cloud City, we have to teach them a lesson. Oh. Sword Demon was surprised, Han Family Young Master was surprised, and Brother Yu was also surprised. The players in the game might have a bit of a sense of regional honor, but it wouldn't be too strong. Very Defying was currently on the forums, and anyone could guess that the attack was related to Ingqi's studio. This had nothing to do with the players from outside the city bullying them. Unsworn Sword waving the flag and wanting to stand up for them, this kindness surprised them. Although these guilds seemed to be on good terms with Very Defying, Sword Demon, Han Family Young Master, and Brother Yu knew that they were still playing the role of the main antagonist in Cloud City. Unsworn Sword was probably laughing behind their backs. It was already good enough that he didn't take advantage of the situation, but he still wanted to stand up for them. Could it be that this guy really changed his personality and really treated Very Defying as a friend from the bottom of his heart? Or... The Han Family Young Master glanced at Gu Xiaoshang. If this woman came out to help them, he would believe her more. However, Gu Xiaoshang didn't have a deep relationship with them. If they asked her for help, she might not avoid it, but if they wanted to take the initiative to intervene, she didn't seem to be so enthusiastic. Moreover, she came to help when she wanted to. She even dragged the Sword of No Oath along with her. This was not her style. The Han Family Young Master shook his head and denied this judgment. Gu Xiaoshang had been pulled over by Unsworn Sword in the name of helping them, so it made more sense. In other words, the mastermind behind all of this was the Sword of No Oath. What was that guy planning? Who are they? Unsworn Sword asked. I'm not sure yet. Sword Demon was an honest person. Although there was no one else other than Ingqi who could come from the outer city to cause trouble for them, there was no clear evidence that Ingqi sent this group of people, so he was cautious with his words. I think Ingqi's studio is taking revenge on you, right? Unsworn Sword came to a conclusion. Other than that, I can't think of any other possibilities. Sword Demon was also honest. If that's the case, although they were forced to retreat this time, I'm afraid they won't let it go and will come back again. Unsworn Sword said. Probably. Sword Demon replied. We'll just wait for them to come again. Unsworn Sword slammed the table. Sword Demon silently looked at him for a while before saying, Why did you invite me here, Guild Leader Unsworn? Unsworn Sword looked at Sword Demon in shock. The people from the outer city are bullying our Cloud City players. As the biggest guild in Cloud City, how can we sit back and do nothing? Didn't we invite Xiaoshang to come with us? Boss Sword Demon, don't worry, we'll support you to the end. I don't want to trouble you guys, right? Sword Demon already knew what Unsworn Sword was trying to say. In fact, he was confused as to why Unsworn Sword was so enthusiastic. It was too confusing. What trouble? Aren't you treating me like an outsider? Unsworn Sword said, My guild has already been mobilized. What's the current situation? What the hell is this guy doing? Brother Yu muttered in the mercenary channel. Unsworn Sword's enthusiasm was abnormal to anyone who saw it. They weren't like Rosy Cloud Space, where Unsworn Sword would go all out to please a beautiful guild leader. Of course he's not trying to please us. If he's trying to please us, it's still too early. Han Family Young Master said. What do you mean? Now that he's making a move, it's a bit like sending charcoal in the snow, but adding flowers to brocade is probably his style. Han Family Young Master said. Makes sense. Brother Yu nodded. Unsworn Sword looked like a thick-skinned guy, but he was actually quite smart. Just relying on being thick-skinned wasn't enough to lead such a large guild. Why aren't you guys saying anything? Unsworn Sword asked. The current situation is hard to describe. We don't know what the opponent's next step is. Even if it's the first wave, there might still be a portion of them remaining in Cloud City, and they might ambush us at any time. Han Family Young Master suddenly said. Oh. There are still people there. What are their characteristics? Unsworn Sword asked. I'm not sure. Han Family Young Master said. Then it'll be hard to find them. Unsworn Sword said with a bit of disappointment. Their background isn't small. Among the members we killed in the first wave, 8 of them are likely to be in the top 30 of their respective professions. Han family young master said. The stronger the opponent, the more excited I get. Everyone almost vomited. Gu Xiaoshang had already slammed the table and stood up, but in the end, he still looked at Sword Demon and the others. If there's anything, just let me know. Han family young master nodded. From what he saw, Gu Xiaoshang's attitude was more normal. Unsworn Sword's attitude was a bit too polite. But after probing step by step, Han family young master felt like he could more or less guess what this guy was thinking. These 8 people also came from different main cities. This time, we'll be facing experts from all over the game. Han family young master said. It's my honor. Unsworn Sword's pretense had no end. Then in this situation, if it was you, what would you do? Han family young master changed the topic. Using stillness to counter change, and remaining unchanged to deal with all changes. Leave more scouts in the city and pay attention to the movements of these team players. Unsworn Sword said. Especially those with gorgeous equipment. You have to pay attention to them. In fact, we all know which experts in Cloud Peak City can make people's eyes light up, and most of them are known to us. The Han family's young master said. Yes. Unsworn Sword nodded. Among the group of people who haven't left yet, there might be people like that. Han family young master said. I'll tell people to pay attention. Unsworn Sword said. Thank you for your help, Unsworn Sword. Han family young master said. Don't mention it, it's what I should do. Unsworn Sword heroically waved his hand. What do you mean, you're just going to accept this guy? Brother, you asked in the channel. There's no reason to refuse. Plus, you can't refuse. Han family young master said. Unsworn Sword. Seems to be very interested in experts. Brother, you said. Unsworn Sword. Seems to be very interested in experts. Sword Demon carefully observed and noticed the excitement in Unsworn Sword's words. Does he really think of Qianli as his idol? Brother Yu was puzzled. Being interested in experts had always been Gu Fei's style. What he's interested in is probably the equipment of experts, right? Han family young master said. Oh. Brother Yu paused. A lot of bosses with exquisite equipment are suddenly coming over, are you interested? Han family young master asked. This guy is too evil. Brother Yu sighed. Unsworn Sword was treating these experts as bosses that would drop top-tier equipment. This explained why Unsworn Sword was so enthusiastic and confident in getting his entire guild to participate in this battle. In the game, the guild leader's control over the guild was very average. There could be many reasons why a guild member could unite as one to complete a task. The guild leader's command was definitely not an effective motivation, but the benefits of obtaining top-tier equipment was definitely one of them. Did Qianli get anything from killing so many people? Han family young master suddenly asked. Nothing too good. Sword Demon replied. Equipment that could attract experts of their level was already considered the best in the game. Ordinary exquisite equipment wouldn't be too eye-catching. It's the good ones that didn't drop. Brother, you said. Sword Demon nodded. His current level was quite low, so his appraisal skill was definitely useless against experts in the top 30. However, with Sword Demon's experience, there were some things that didn't require appraisal skill. He could just use his eyes to determine what it was. Based on the speed, strength, defense, etc., the situation he deduced was not much different from appraisal skill. It might even be better than appraisal skill. Appraisal skill often had question marks. Are we just going to let Unsworn Sword do as he pleases? Brother, you asked. If this goes on, things will get bigger and bigger. Sword Demon frowned. Losing levels, losing equipment, what loss in the game was more hateful than this? The players that suffered such a blow definitely wouldn't just quietly endure it. The more skilled they were, the more they would want to get back at them. This cycle repeated endlessly. In addition to the fact that the game was full of deaths, there was no need for future generations to take revenge. Yeah, it's going to be unprecedentedly lively, Han family young master said. While they were communicating in the channel, Unsworn Sword seemed to have made some arrangements in the guild. After he was done, he said, "Then, if there's any new situation, make sure to inform me. Our Cloud City players can't be bullied so easily." "Okay." Sword Demon replied. This reply contained a lot of helplessness. He didn't want to drag in too many people, but he knew that this was something he couldn't control. This was because no one could stop the players from hunting bosses and obtaining exquisite equipment. Although they treated other players as bosses this time, this was how it was in the game. Although killing people for no good reason like Southbound Sword and the others was looked down upon, as long as there was a reasonable conflict of interest as an excuse, killing people for loot was something that the players recognized. Sword Ghost was no exception to this. "Then we'll take our leave first. We'll keep in touch if there's anything." Unsworn Sword warned them again and again. This was because he was afraid that they would secretly kill bosses and not give them a single spoonful. This guy, does he even understand the situation? Brother, you didn't know whether to laugh or cry. A strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. Those guys don't know the situation. If they attack again, I think Unsworn Sword and the others will really get quite a bit of loot. Han family young master said. Then after that? Sword Demon said. After that. Han family young master didn't say anything. It was very heaven-defying. As they had expected, not all of the important figures had returned. The ones that didn't return were naturally the half of the people that came again. They went to set up an ambush, but who would have thought that Qianli's target was their team? Their team's movement speed wasn't enough to lure Qianli into an ambush, so the ambush became a joke. Their half of the team didn't seem to be able to stop Qianli's strength, so they didn't come back for reinforcements. After Weathered Sword and the others teleported and retreated, Weathered Sword made the four teams completely split up. First, they didn't gather together to attract attention, and second, they began to carry out the next step of their plan, to fully understand Qianli's strength. Other than the higher-ups of the four teams who went offline to participate in the meeting, the remaining players were currently in Cloud City's taverns, auction houses, trading streets, leveling areas, etc. They would bring the topic of Qianli's drunkard to gather more information. In the offline group meeting, they also made some progress. After a detailed analysis of the fight with Qianli's drunkard, Weathered Sword suddenly thought of a detail. Qianli's drunkard didn't use appraisal before he fought me. Weathered Sword said. Oh. Everyone was surprised. This was an incomprehensible behavior among experts. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. By understanding the opponent's equipment, you can determine the opponent's attack, defense, speed, and other attributes. If you also discovered the skills contained in the equipment, it would be even easier to defend against it. Maybe he's too strong. Weathered Sword said, understanding the opponent's equipment isn't important to him anymore. Isn't it a bit hasty to come to this conclusion based on your PK with him? Maybe he just forgot at the time, and not because of his fighting habits. Someone doubted. Using appraisal to identify the opponent is a fighting habit in itself. Which one of you would forget this before a PK? If you forget, it means he doesn't have this kind of habit. Weathered Sword said. Makes sense. Someone agreed. Not using appraisal. Then it's a miracle that he's still alive. If he met someone with reflect damage, his high damage would have bounced himself to death. Someone said. The discussion group instantly quieted down. So the method to deal with Qianli's drunkard had already appeared so inadvertently. Reflect damage. Very few people would use this kind of equipment, right? Someone said. It definitely won't work if you train alone. You have to recover after a few hits. It's too much time and money to buy food. Someone said. Fighting the boss isn't bad. A high HP reflect, and then a bunch of clerics heal. The clerics will beautifully OT, no doubt about it. It's really a useless attribute that no one would choose. But in a special situation like this, it can finally be put to good use. Let's do this. Someone suggested. Chapter 892. After deciding on how to deal with Qianli's drunken, it was time to choose people and get equipment. These weren't too difficult of a task, so someone immediately called for people to do it. Reflective equipment wasn't very valuable, but because it wasn't valuable, it was hard to find on the market. Any player with a bit of common sense wouldn't think of selling this equipment to make money. However, they had mobilized the strength of 31 main cities, so it wasn't hard to scavenge for this equipment. In addition, considering that this equipment wasn't much different from white equipment, the higher-ups all had their subordinates scavenge for it. When the time came, they would send a few more people. Qianli's drunken would only die faster. As for the equipment, they only needed characters with high health, so they didn't need to specially look for them. With the problem of dealing with Qianli's drunken settled, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Besides Qianli's drunken, did you guys notice another expert? Heavenly Arrow said. You're talking about that assassin? Experienced Man said. Who is that? The others asked. I think that's the extremely overpowered guild leader, Sword Demon. Experienced Man said. Sword Demon. This name was quite impactful in the in-game circle. I heard he's a pretty good person. Yeah, when I played XXX, I was on the same level as him. You know him? I don't really know him. Sword Demon is an expert, yes, but compared to Qianli's drunken, he's still far from it. I think that skill of his is a bit scary. Its damage is higher than Qianli's drunken. However, this kind of high damage skill will definitely have a long cooldown. As long as this skill is on cooldown, Sword Demon doesn't have the overpowered ability of Qianli's drunken. Experienced Man said. But Sword Demon is an experienced player. He wouldn't ignore the appraisal before the battle, right? We can't let him see through our method of dealing with Qianli's drunken. Low Temperature said. It's not just him. Which decent player wouldn't do their best to identify their opponent before a battle? Someone said. Yeah. Qianli's drunkenness is outrageous. Everyone condemned. Although most of the people here had never fought against 1,000 miles drunk before, after hearing about his powerful legend, they all felt displeased with such a person. They were filled with envy, jealousy, and all kinds of emotions. So this time, it's not difficult for us to gather such equipment. The difficult part is to use it without being discovered by others. Alas, if only I had been prepared for this the first time when I fought Qianli Izue. He was alone then, without any help. Said the weather-beaten man. There will always be a chance. Someone encouraged everyone. One more time. Did the people you left behind discover anything? Asked the weather-beaten man. You'll have to enter the game to know. However, if there's really something worth paying attention to, they'll directly contact me offline. It seems like there isn't. Try again. Since we have an idea of how to deal with Qianli's drunken, then let's all go back to the game and prepare. Everything else will be done according to what we discussed before. Experienced said. Okay, let's do that. Everyone nodded and returned to the game. At the end of the discussion, 30 out of 31 people participated. The ones who originally planned to walk to Cloud City agreed to use scrolls under everyone's persuasion. The only one who didn't show up was the guy called Sandpaper. Previously, when Experienced was discussing with everyone, this guy was lukewarm and didn't cooperate at all. At this time, the other bosses who were hurrying to the main city had already gone offline to participate in the discussion. Only this guy said that he was on the road. Now that the discussion was over and he was nowhere to be seen, everyone was too lazy to bother with him. 30 people, 31 people, one less wouldn't make a big difference. Experience persevered. After going online, he sent a message to Sandpaper, telling him the results of the discussion, especially pointing out that the other walkers were preparing to change to flying. In the end, Sandpaper replied with a lukewarm, "Got it." So Experienced pointed out, "If you're any slower, everyone will be finished by then." Finished implied that very overpowered had already been dealt with, but Sandpaper didn't participate, so how was he going to finding chi to exchange for the reward? In the end, Sandpaper's reply was 3 words, "Got it." Damn it. Experienced angrily closed the message chat. This Sandpaper didn't know what was good for him, and was much more annoying than Qianli's drunken. After returning to the game, the VIPs personally took charge of the work. Everything was quickly implemented. The VIPs frequently exchanged private messages with each other. Even though it was a bit tiring, it was to prevent any mistakes. Experienced was now officially appointed as the commander-in-chief of the Allied army. At this time, he was a bit busier than anyone else. When everything was ready, Experienced finally sent a group message. This time, 30 teams flew to Cloud City at the same time. As soon as they arrived, Weathered Frost quickly formed a party. Soon after, he received requests from the other 29 VIPs to join the party. In less than half a minute, everything was settled. The party channel was immediately activated, and Weathered Frost gave his first order. Act according to plan. The VIPs led their subordinates and rushed to their destination according to their plan. Don't get too close. Observe when we reach the outer circle, Experienced said in the team. Okay. This time, all the teams had 20 people, uniform and orderly. The VIPs who were ambushed and wiped out were furious, and prepared to invite more people to their hometown for revenge. However, after participating in the discussion group meeting, they dispelled this impulse. Having more people was a high investment plan, but the return might not be certain. In the discussion group, everyone worked together to come up with a targeted layout. This was clearly a more economical and effective plan, so in the end, these people acted according to the deployment like everyone else. Report your coordinates when you arrive. Experienced sent a message after he arrived at the predetermined location, and the 29 people reported their coordinates one after another. Although they weren't familiar with the geography of Cloud City, with the coordinates, they could roughly determine the other side's position and distance. I suggest we send someone to scout first. Low Temperature said. Yup, those with enhanced stealth, go. Experienced in Life said. This time, they carefully prepared and gathered all kinds of talents. Enhanced stealth was a passive skill, and the description was only 1 sentence, making it harder for the enemy to detect you. There was no specific data, but after testing, it was indeed very effective in enhancing stealth. Those who could previously be seen through by anti-stealth skills were equipped with enhanced stealth equipment, and the chances of being detected were greatly reduced. If they also had the class bonus of becoming a godly thief, then they would be even more powerful. At this time, the 4 godly thief players with enhanced stealth were sent out to scout. After leaving the team, they quietly snuck into the area ahead. The 30 teams stayed outside the circle, quietly waiting for news. Each team, send 1 person out. Expand the scouting area, and pay attention to our backs. Experienced suddenly said. You're afraid the other side has an ambush outside the circle? Low Temperature said. That's right. If we beat them at their own game, then we'll have to be on guard against the other side. Experienced said. Won't there be no end to this? Someone said. That won't happen. With their manpower, this is the most they can do. Experienced said. Thus, each team followed his orders and sent people to scout around and behind their respective teams. News. Hurry up and send news. Although he was calm when he gave his orders, he was actually very anxious. Before they received any concrete news, it was unknown whether or not their plan would succeed. He couldn't help but worry. There's an ambush inside the circle. Finally, he got the news he was looking for. 4 godly thieves who had snuck in from different directions had sent him information. Mark the coordinates, determine the area, and the number of people. Experienced said. Later. The 4 godly thieves all reported the results to their respective bosses, and the bosses then told everyone in their team channel. Everyone was either discussing or making judgments based on their experience. Everything was proceeding harmoniously. The other side's ambush is clearly aimed at our predetermined location. Their people are lying in ambush in the surrounding alleys. I think there should be stealthy thieves observing the streets outside. The 4 of us will be in charge of the 4 directions in the north, south, east, and west. The 4 godly thieves also formed a small team and worked together. The team leader would gather the results and then report to his superiors. Okay, be careful. After receiving the report, the big shot warned. How's the situation outside? The area is relatively large, and the target is not easy to determine. I suggest sending more people. A small team was formed outside, and the team leader reported. Send another team. Experienced said. He knew the importance of intelligence work. Thus, each team sent another team. There were 60 people in the outer circle. Compared to the 4 godly thieves in the inner circle, it was a lot more ostentatious. After another period of torturous waiting, the godly thief group finally reported, the investigation is completed. The other side has set up the following ambush locations. There are 5 teams in the north with about 50 people, 4 teams in the west with about 60 people, 6 teams in the north with about 60 people, and 4 teams in the south with about 60 people. The distribution of each team is as follows. The godly thief group's report was passed to the Big Shots channel. After everyone saw it, they all had a sinister smile on their faces. What about Chinley drunk? Have you found his location? Asked the weather-beaten man. Not yet, we will continue to pay attention. The godly thief group replied. Finding the location of 1,000 miles drunk was also one of the main points of their work. This determined which direction the damage reflection personnel would engage in the battle. If they didn't go in the opposite direction, by the time they rushed over, maybe Chinley drunk would have already killed 29 people. This guy's killing efficiency was too high. Chapter 893. How's the situation at the outer perimeter? After listening to the thief god's report, Weathered Frost continued to ask about the outer perimeter. Nothing. The report from the outer perimeter made Weathered Frost completely relax. In the channel, Sword Adjudicator said, how can there be any outer perimeter? Very overpowered. They only have so few people and they're all inside. They're dead for sure. We can't just consider very overpowered. From the information we've gathered, although very overpowered is currently being ostracized in Cloud City, there are still some guilds that are familiar with it. For example, Eternal Life Amidst the Flowers. During a siege battle, he helped very overpowered turn the gun around and was despised by all the players in the city. There's also Reborn Amethyst, a purely female guild where Chinley drunk stayed for a long time. Damn, how did he get in there? During the siege, Reborn Amethyst was also one of the defending guilds. Later on, they merged with very overpowered. However, the original members of this guild split up and rebuilt their Reborn Amethyst. Yes, this very overpowered is full of bandits and PvP maniacs. How can a beauty stay in a guild like this? Hey, just say it. Don't keep interrupting with so much nonsense. This person who introduced very overpowered's diplomatic background was despised by everyone. Anyway, that's it. Very overpowered is also related to a good guild. Plus, the guild members have some personal friends, so it's not surprising that they could invite some helpers. We should be more careful. This person didn't stray away from the topic. Yes, let them continue to pay attention to the outer perimeter. We don't lack 60 people in the battle. It's extremely heaven-defying. The only troublesome thing is 1,000 miles drunk. Let's quickly find his position and launch our attack. Weathered Frost's words made everyone rub their palms together, especially those who had been abused before. Thinking about how they could take revenge, a wave of pleasure had already emerged. They were just waiting for the climax to come. However, the thief god group still hadn't sent any news. These guys were stifled. It's not easy to find a special 1 out of 200 people. Someone began to find excuses for the thief god group. Yeah, especially since they haven't seen Qianli drunk before. If it's just black robe, it's easy to make a mistake. Yes, if it's a sword, he might not be holding it in his hand. What do you mean? Experienced in life, he could tell that there was a hidden meaning in their words. Do it. Finding Qianli like this is a bit difficult. Otherwise, they would have already discovered him in the process of scouting. After all, they wouldn't dare to get too close, someone said. If this drags on for too long, the other party might not have the patience to continue defending. If the godly thieves are discovered, they will be even more exposed. Although they have enhanced stealth, it is not 100% impossible to be discovered. Although he was a little reluctant, he had to admit that these analyses were very reasonable. If they continued to wait, it was very likely that they would miss out on a great opportunity. They were hired to attack the very defiant, not to deal with Qianli. Qianli's drunkenness was just a stumbling block in their goal. It was necessary to kick him away, but it would be a pity to ignore other good opportunities just to kick him away. Alright, get ready to move. Don't put on your reflective equipment yet. Attack with the team and don't need to participate in the battle. Pay attention to protect yourself and wait for instructions, experienced in life said. Understood. The reflective personnel were also a special small team for this operation. Alright, everyone get ready. Attack. Experienced in life gave the order, and 30 teams of people hiding in the periphery rushed out. The godly thief group had already seen the distribution of the ambush, and each team had already been assigned which side to take care of. However, if one of the teams hid Qianli's drunkenness, then it would be somewhat bad. Everyone could only rely on their luck. If they encountered Qianli's drunkenness, then they would think of ways to delay. As for how to delay, this topic would be researched by themselves. Each team's target was accurate, and they moved quickly. With the godly thief group's detailed reconnaissance, they were also somewhat prepared for the unfamiliar terrain. After each team found their way to the other side's ambush alley, they saw a group of thieves lying in ambush in the alley. However, the godly thief group's judgment of the other side's stealthy thieves on the street wasn't wrong. The paths that some teams chose were discovered by these thieves on the lookout. However, this time, each team was also equipped with anti-stealth equipment. When the thieves discovered that this group of people was strange, they were also discovered by this group of people. Although they delivered the information, they also sacrificed themselves heroically. At this time, the ones with the highest fighting spirit were undoubtedly the several important figures who were previously ambushed and wiped out. Seeing that the other side wanted to ambush like this again, they really couldn't help but be angry. The commands started to attack from a distance of 60 meters, and from far to near, they shouted and killed their way over. It seems to have started. At this time, at a certain high point in Cloud City, Yutian Shenming suddenly shouted excitedly. I know. Hawkeye is nothing. Han family young master held the binoculars in his hands, happy and content. At this distance, even Hawkeye couldn't see too clearly, let alone the others. Brother Yu, unscathed in battle, Yun Zhongmu, and the others all looked at the binoculars with a face full of curiosity. Only Sword Demon was as calm as ever. It's so far away, I can't even see clearly. Yutian Shenming complained. This is already the closest place in the area. Sword Demon said. I know. Yutian Shenming said helplessly. You know. What do you know? The terrain? Han family young master mocked. Fuck. Yutian Shenming was depressed. Come, let me see. Brother Yu saw that Han family young master put down the binoculars at this time and hurriedly went up to snatch it. As he put it on his eye, he shouted, Where? Over here, I can see it. Fuck, it's intense, more flowers. Fuck, can sword without oath and the others take it. Let me see. Unscathed in battle, Yun Zhongmu and the others all came. The people here lined up behind Brother Yu to wait for the binoculars. The boss has already been delivered to his door. Whether he can eat it or not, that's his problem. Han family young master had already taken a bottle of beer to the side to drink. After seeing the start of the battle, he didn't care about the development of the battle anymore. Seeing everyone look over, he was even more disdainful. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a sinister pretty boy before? What are you doing here? At this time, Gu Fei came up to the high ground from below. He ran to Moonlit Night City to wash his PK. After finding out that he had nothing to do temporarily, he played around in Moonlit Night City for a while. When he returned to Cloud City, he asked everyone where they were. After finding out that it was here, he hurried over. However, he didn't understand what they were all doing on the rooftop. Qianli, come and watch the show. Brother Yu watched for a while. The people behind him were getting impatient. Unscathed in battle was about to come up and snatch the boss. Seeing that Gu Fei had arrived, he hurriedly did him a favor and used it to take revenge on Unscathed in battle who kept arguing behind him. No one seemed to have any objections to Gu Fei cutting the line, or perhaps they didn't dare to. Gu Fei didn't notice this either. He walked up and took the binoculars from Brother Yu's hands. Yo, what's going on? They're fighting again. This is great. Next time, we don't have to go to Moonlit Night City to wash our PK. Everyone was speechless. Then, they replied to Gu Fei, it's Sword Without Oath and the guy who came looking for trouble. Sword Without Oath? Why is he here? Gu Fei was surprised. Because of a sinister person. Everyone said. Gu Fei immediately looked towards Han family young master. This made everyone feel very comfortable. As expected. Speaking of sinister, there was no doubt that it was him. Even Qianli saw it that way. Everyone felt that they really agreed with him. Don't say nonsense. I'm just doing what he wants. Han family young master said. Then why does it seem like he was ambushed? Everyone said. Even a wise man would make a mistake. Chapter 894. Due to the urgency of the situation, Unsworn Sword, Reflection of Years, and the others did not have the time to think about what kind of trap this was. Although they had always known that the Han family young master was a sinister person, they did not doubt the information revealed by the Han family young master this time. After all, although this person was sinister, he was sinister with a purpose. In the current situation, he wanted to frame them to make enemies. No matter how they thought about it, it was impossible. However, now that they were really in a trap, it was inevitable that this view was strengthened. It was just that they had no time to think about it, and all the time they had was used to call for reinforcements. Fortunately, the nearly 200 people selected by Unsworn Sword for the ambush this time were all elites of the guild, and they cooperated well. After the sudden attack, they panicked a little, but after the guild leader's orders were passed down, everyone immediately retreated in an orderly manner. It was impossible to break out of the encirclement. At this time, everyone was blocked in the alley, and they could only come out from the other end, meet up with the place where they had originally planned to ambush the other party, and wait for reinforcements. Damn it, what the hell is that guy doing this time? Reflection of Years, Wind Walking, and Unsworn Sword were all experts. With the three of them personally guarding this path, their strength was obviously higher than the other paths, so it was not too difficult to deal with the other party's attack. After calming down from the initial panic, they had the energy to speak. Let's take care of the situation first. Unsworn Sword was not as relaxed as Reflection of Years. The warrior he faced could be said to be evenly matched with him, and he did not have a 100% chance of winning in a one-on-one fight. At this time, in the chaotic battle, he had to constantly be on guard against sneak attacks, so he did not dare to be distracted. Colluding with the studio to grasp our movements, do you think you can fool us with such a small trick? The other party's warrior suddenly said. After hearing this, Unsworn Sword and the others came to a realization. It turned out that the other party was more intelligent, and did not intend to frame them. Understanding this, Unsworn Sword felt slightly comforted. After all, being intentionally set up was a completely different feeling. Everyone, put in more effort, kill. The warrior roared again. Everyone, stay calm, retreat. Unsworn Sword was also calm and unruffled, retreating as he fought. He did not intend to fight to the death with his opponent here. Both sides of the chaotic battle had taken damage from each other. The players from the various major cities had the advantage in numbers, and the players from reigning the four seas were well versed in their teamwork.